I literally can sit there 8:30.
The time being 5:03 p.m., I'll call to order the December 4th regular meeting of the Minneapolis Park Board to order. Secretary Ringgold, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Musich. Present. Commissioner Cogill.
Present.
Commissioner Severson.
Present.
Commissioner Meyer. Commissioner Vita.
Present.
Commissioner French.
Here.
Commissioner Forney.
Here.
Vice President Hassan.
Here.
President Bourne.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the following change. There's a request from staff to move 2019-401 from the Admin and Finance Committee to the full board this evening. Is there any discussion? Is there a motion?
Could you tell us what that motion is? Resolution
Admin
is?
and Finance 29. Is there a motion? It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Musich, you had asked for a reading of 2019.
Just a reading of it so that people know what it is we're considering moving.
Deputy Superintendent, Secretary Ringgold, would you, can you pull 2019-401 for us?
I can. President, Board, Commissioners, this is resolution approving change order number 1 with JPMI Construction Contract COM 0000909 for the Worth Chalet Water Intrusion Remediation Project at Theodore Worth Regional Park in the amount of $119,626 for a new contract total of $347,626.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Director Olson, it's my understanding that there was also a request to possibly add a resolution to the full board this evening from Admin and Finance as well. That is Resolution 2019-403. Director Olson, do you just want to state that request really quick so the board is aware of that?
Sure, certainly. Good evening, Commissioners. President Bourne. Staff requests consideration of Resolution 2019-403 on the Administration and Finance Committee agenda, which is a resolution approving a boat docking permit agreement with Paradise Charter Cruises and the Minneapolis Queen for a term beginning on January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2029, for a fee beginning at $39,416.39 and increasing by 2% each year of the agreement. Staff requests that resolution be considered at Admin and Finance this evening, and if it does pass Admin and Finance, that it be moved to full board this evening as well.
If there is no objection, I would take that as a consent amendment to the motion to approve the agenda. Is there any objection to adding that resolution? Is there any objection? The motion on the floor is to amend the agenda with those two items from Admin and Finance to the full board this evening. Is there any further discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all of those in favor of the agenda with the two additions from Admin and Finance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the agenda is approved. I would entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes for November 20th, 2019. Is there a motion? So moved. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the minutes of November 20th? Seeing none, all of those in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the minutes are approved. Going to reports of officers, Superintendent Bangora.
Thank you, President Bourne, Commissioners, and welcome everybody. I want to start with a quick note about tonight's broadcast. The NPRB December 4th, 2019 Board of Commissioners meeting, just say of course, broadcast will conflict with the 6 o'clock p.m. City of Minneapolis public hearing. As a result, the December 4th Board of Commissioners meeting will broadcast live on City of Minneapolis Comcast Channel 859 and CenturyLink Channel 8002 and 8502. So also the today's broadcast will also be at the 6 o'clock p.m. City of Minneapolis public hearing. So I just want to make sure I shared that with the group here of the change with the broadcast. So with that, I'll just start with athletics and aquatics and ice arenas. So aquatics, For the last swim lesson session of fall, aquatics taught 201 principles of water safety and swimming skills. Aquatic staff have taught 2,223 swim lessons. 2,118 of them were youth. So fantastic numbers. Ice arenas. The arenas are busy with hockey season. During the Thanksgiving holiday week, we hosted 2 high school hockey games, 2 junior A hockey games, and a youth hockey tournament. I think we're waiting for, hopefully, visuals to come up, but that's okay, I'll keep going. Golf. Cross-country ski trails are now groomed at Theodore Worth, Columbia, and Hiawatha. Sledding has also begun with many users over the holiday weekend. Recreation centers and programs. Last Wednesday, over 60 seniors enjoyed a home-cooked Thanksgiving dinner prepared by the MPRB staff at Nokomis Community Center. After dinner, the music of the Commodores filled the park with big band music. I wish you could see the films or the pictures on here because it was wonderful, great turnout, and what a wonderful event. So thank you to the staff and Nokomis Community Center. Youth development. The Youth Development Department is hosting a social and emotional learning, SEL, training in partnership with the University of Minnesota Extension. SEL training includes learning to be aware of and manage emotions, work well with others, and persevere with faced with challenges. Youth programs develop SEL skills by creating opportunities for young people to engage in real-world projects, work in teams, take on meaningful roles, face challenges, and experience the accompanying emotional ups and downs along the way. The training is scheduled for 2 dates, Wednesday, December 4th, which is today, and Monday, December 16th. The Forestry Department. Forestry crews receive their annual line clearance recertification training. Because we prune trees near overhead wires, this training teaches our arborists how to do their work safely. Maintenance and operations. Equipment. Seasonal equipment has been winterized and stored for the winter months. Equipment shop is working hard to keep all snow removal equipment working as we are working through the kinks of the first winter storm. And I just have to say for the operations, what a fantastic job they did during our first storm and clearing our pathways. And I'm also proud of that to see that they're all clear. So thank you very much for that work. Energy management. December 1st was the last day the public boat launches were open at Minneapolis, Lake Harriet, and Lake Nokomis in 2019. More than 5,000 aquatic invasive species inspections were conducted at the launches in 2019 through mid-November. In addition to performing inspections, inspectors interacted with more than 17,500 park patrons at their information booths. In addition to performing inspections, inspectors interacted with more than, repeat the same thing. We are happy to report that no infestation of new aquatic invasive species were found in Minneapolis lakes this year. That's just fantastic work, and to say again, thank you for all the hard work they've done all summer, and I did stop by several times to say hi to everybody out there, but what a wonderful thing to hear, so wonderful work. Also, as you're aware, our dedicated environmental management staff use a variety of techniques to search for zebra mussels in our lakes, and I want to share the results of a new method which launched this past summer. So with support from the Hennepin County grant, staff utilized a cutting-edge technique called environmental DNA monitoring, or eDNA, to search for zebra mussels in 6 Minneapolis lakes in 2019. Using eDNA monitoring and all of the numerous other early detection tools at our disposal, we were not able to find an established zebra mussel population in the chain of lakes or Nokomis. While this is good news, the results represent a test taken at a snapshot in time, and we still treat Minneapolis, Lake Harriet, Lake Nokomis as if they are infested, per the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources official designation. Additional searching for zebra mussels will occur in 2020 and beyond. As a reminder, since the program began in 2012, staff have stopped nearly 75 live zebra mussels from entering our lakes. If you would like to learn more about our MPRB's early detection efforts, this information is posted under a newly created AIS Early Detection section of the Aquatic Invasive Species page on the MPRB website. And I can't say how much this is just wonderful news and what the wonderful work that we do. So again, thank you to staff for just this fantastic news. Community outreach. The Minneapolis International Festival will take place on Sunday, December 8th from 1 to 5 at Central Gym. We invite you to come celebrate with different cultures in Minneapolis. This event is free and open to the public. It will feature cultural celebrations including artistic performances, food, exhibits, and booths. Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board 2021 Comprehensive Plan. The first Community Advisory Committee, CAC, meeting for Parks for All, the MPRB 2021 Comprehensive Plan, will be held on December 12th from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. at the Park Board headquarters in the boardroom. All meetings are open to the public. Dinner will be served and children's activities will be offered. We hope that the community, everyone can join us for this meeting. So the next thing I'd like to do is show you a thing called Parks for All Comprehensive Plan video. So I'll give a quick little background about this, and then we will then show the video and then acknowledge these wonderful young people in the room today who I see working diligently in the evenings down in the planning room, and I'm so impressed with them. I was just blown away when I saw this and the work they do. And I'll also give a plug too, is that this work is what we talk about technology and how it links into the work we do. And so we talk about ideation spaces, innovation, digital literacy, and the work. This is a prime example of what young people can do to tell a story in using technology. And this is some of the work that I'm looking forward to next year. So there is a crew of youth from across the city of Minneapolis that are working as staff on Parks for All, the MPRB's 2021 Comprehensive Plan, called the Youth Design Team. They have been working since early this summer on the project to ensure the youth perspectives are included in the guiding vision and policy priorities for the next decade of the park and recreation system. They began by shadowing departments and interviewing staff across the agency. They are also out this summer supporting the Parks for All community engagement efforts to hear directly from community at events and in public spaces. They have engaged other youth voices through creative engagement practices and have made policy recommendations all along the way to MPRB. This fall, they produced a short stop-motion film to tell the story of the comp plan and to invite community to engage in the process. And we wanted to share this with you tonight. So at this moment, we'll show the video.
Parks for All by the Youth Design Team.
We live in a busy city with a lot of buildings, traffic, and fast-paced living. Our parks offer the opportunity to be in nature, play sports, and enjoy programs with our families and friends in almost every neighborhood.
These beautiful natural spaces mean so much to our communities, and it's up to us to make sure that they are open and welcoming places that serve us all.
The Minneapolis parks are located on traditional, ancestral, and contemporary Dakota land. They are the original stewards of the land we walk on, play on, and enjoy. They were removed from the land through violence and have fought since then to be acknowledged and respected. We can listen, learn, and act to honor them and their land now and in the future.
Part of making sure our parks are parks for all is having ways to ask our communities what they envision and need now and into the future. Parks for All is MPRB's comprehensive planning process that is working to envision the priorities and goals for our park system and staff for the next decade.
Talking to the community, we're hearing what people want to see in their parks.
Innovation,
like geocaching programs,
recreation, concerns,
more basketball
swings,
courts,
basketball, no trash courts in the lake. I wish my parks had more recycling.
My park needs yoga outside.
Park policies and plans also help us build on what we learn from communities to guide the park board into the future. We see the process like the growth of a tree. Community engagement and MPRB plans and policies will create the foundation and feed the plan as it grows.
Each season, we're moving through different stages of the planning process.
There's so many ways to get your voice and opinions into the plan.
We want you to join the conversation.
Invite a friend to attend community meetings.
There's always something for you to help us at the park board.
Come help us finish planning the comprehensive plan.
Sign up, get updated on what we're doing.
Share what you hope to see in the future.
Help us make our parks for all.
The youth design team would like to thank all the people who helped make this film possible.
All right. If you can do me a favor, these wonderful young people, and of course, Dr. Can you please stand and so we can all acknowledge you and the wonderful work that you did? Thank you. I will say that I'm so impressed. Like I said, I've stopped down there several times. I saw you guys working on these. I mean, I can't tell you how many hours you worked on it, but I know it was a lot of hours, right? And you did such a wonderful job, and so thank you for your work. I know you guys are doing some really amazing things. The fact that you use that kind of technology to show and tell your story is so impressive. And so thank you for your work. Really impressed with you, and I've been blown away by it, so thank you again. And I'll stop by there more often, and I'll sit with you guys, and you can kind of show me how to do this stuff, okay? So thank you. Appreciate you very much. All right. So with that, a couple more things. Tower side, some great news. So this week, MPRB is purchasing a new complete park on 4th Street Southeast and 29th Avenue Southeast. The project was a multi-year collaborative effort with MPRB, the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization, and the local developer, Prospect Park Properties. The park was constructed this fall and includes a community garden, flexible green space, an irrigation system that is fed by filtered stormwater, and native planting, a boulder seating area, bike racks, and a picnic pavilion. The MWMO District Stormwater Site is also adjacent to the park and will offer additional public space for park users. The park has been a dream of the local neighborhood for over a decade, and the park was master planned as part of the East of the River Park Master Plan. The purchase of the improved park was funded through park dedication fees from the Prospect Park neighborhood. So, and wonderful news, wonderful, wonderful. So the last thing is Upper Harbor Terminal Open House. Please plan to attend the open house for Upper Harbor Terminal from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock p.m. on Saturday, December 7th at North Commons Park. Family-friendly food, site tours, activities for kids, and to get an update and weigh in on the park. We start designing very soon. So with that, President Boren, Commissioners, thank you, and appreciate the time.
Thank you, Superintendent. Before I go on to Commissioner comments and questions, I'm just wondering if the members of our Youth Advisory Committee would take a quick photo with the, would be willing to take a quick photo with the Superintendent and Board?
Absolutely.
Thank
Wonderful
you.
idea.
Dawn Summers will tell everybody where to stand.
She will direct us.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, good job, as usual.
Do not look down there. Okay.
Who knows?
A little bit that way.
There you go. Now it's uncovered.
Okay.
Thank you guys all for your work.
Thank you, Zoe.
Moving on to questions of the superintendent report, and the superintendent is ready, Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Bourne. Superintendent, in your update, you noted that Hiawatha had been groomed and was open. So I found that kind of curious because the Lopit website has no information whatsoever about any location other than Theodore Worth in terms of what's open and being groomed. So thank you for sharing that with us. Is it possible to get them to provide information about all the sites that they're responsible for grooming on their website?
Yes, President Bourne, Commissioner Musich, yes, we can do that.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. Are there any other questions of the superintendent during the report? Moving on, I'll go to consent. The consent agenda. I would entertain a motion for resolutions 2019-394 through 398. So is there a motion? It's been moved. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of resolutions 2019-394 through 398, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the consent agenda carries. Moving on to reports of standing committees, Chair Meyer.
Move resolution 2019-386, a resolution urging the Minneapolis City Council to pass the proposed Bring Your Own Bag ordinance in order to reduce the amount of pollution in our air, parks, and waterways.
The resolution has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on 2019-386? Commissioner Musich.
It did.
Okay, so the city council already passed the thing that we're passing a motion to ask them to pass?
That's correct. And I was planning to take it off the agenda, but forgot when I got here. But
do we want to just table it then?
I would support that if you would like to make that motion.
Okay. I'm going to move to table this item since it's no longer pertinent.
There's been a motion to table
Second.
2019-386 and seconded. All those in favor of the motion to table, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstentions?
No.
The motion to table carries. Moving on to
We take a roll call?
Vice President Hassan has requested a roll call. Secretary Ringgold, would you please take a roll on the motion to table 2019-386?
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Cogill.
No.
Commissioner Severson.
Oh.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Vita.
Aye.
Commissioner French.
Aye.
Commissioner Forney.
Aye.
Vice President Hassan.
No.
President Bourne.
Aye.
You have 5 ayes, 3 nays.
The motion to table carries.
6,
Thank you.
Pardon me.
6 to 3.
Yes.
The motion to table carries. Chair Forney in the
On
Planning
behalf of the Planning Commission, I'd like to move Resolution 2019-387, a resolution accepting the non-appointed Citizen Advisory Committee recommendations and approving a concept plan for park improvements at Bassett's Creek Park.
2019-386 has been, 387 has been moved. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, 2019-387 carries. Chair Vita.
On behalf of the Administration and Finance Committee, I would like to move Resolution 2019-361, a resolution approving the use of $1,250,000 from the Internal Service Fund Mobile Equipment Reserve and to increase the 2019 Asset Management Department Equipment Services budget from $6,089,125 to $7,339,125.
The resolution has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on 2019-361? Seeing none, all those in favor of 2019-361, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? The motion carries. Chair Vita.
I would like to move Resolution 2019-390, a resolution approving a lease agreement with Proline Painting Leasing Commercial Space at 3101 Pacific Street North, Unit 204A, located within above the Regional Falls Park on a month-to-month basis effective December 15, 2019.
Resolution has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on 2019-390? Seeing none, I would ask the secretary to take the roll.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Cogill.
Aye.
Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Vita.
Aye.
Commissioner French.
Aye.
Commissioner Forney.
Aye.
Vice President Hassan.
Aye.
President Bourne.
Aye.
You have 9 ayes.
The motion carries. Chair Vita.
I'd like to move Resolution 2019-391, a resolution agreeing to accept assignment of the City of Minneapolis interest in the interim lease agreement between the City of Minneapolis and North Star Community Rowing for river access operation of a seasonal rowing program to benefit disadvantaged youth and adolescents and adults with physical disabilities at the Upper Harbor Terminal if the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board acquires all or a portion of the property subject to the interim lease agreement prior to October 31st, 2021.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I would ask the secretary to please take the roll.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Cogill. Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Vita.
Aye.
Commissioner French.
Aye.
Commissioner Forney.
Aye.
Vice President Hassan.
Aye.
President Bourne.
Aye.
You have 9 ayes.
The motion carries. Chair Vita.
I'd like to move Resolution 2019-392, resolution entering into a conservation easement with Firefly Woods LLC for real property with addresses 27, 31, 35, 39, 43 Xerxes Avenue South in the city of Minneapolis, Hennepin County, Minnesota, all contingents to Theodore Wirth Regional Park.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on 2019-392? Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Bourne. So I went back through board history and I was looking for other examples of conservation easements and I didn't see them. And so this is kind of a special thing that we're having an agreement put in place for this evening. And I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to the parties of Firefly Woods LLC for their foresight and gift to the people of the city of Minneapolis in terms of granting the public access to this land and giving Wilderness just that little bit extra bit of land to exist on. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. If there's no further discussion, I would ask the secretary to please take the roll.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Cogill.
Aye.
Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Vita.
Aye.
Commissioner French.
Aye.
Commissioner Forney.
Aye.
Vice President Hassan.
Aye.
President Bourne.
Aye.
You have 9 ayes.
The motion carries. Moving on to standards and conduct, Vice President Hassan.
I would like to move Resolution 2019-393, resolution amended the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board rules of the board.
The motion has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Forney.
I've had some opportunity to reflect on this resolution, and I feel that it's loaded with unintended consequences. And so I will be voting against it, and I would strongly encourage my colleagues to do the same. I feel that we are setting ourselves up for more problems as a result of changing our rules on this, and would advise people that it's best for us not to be supporting this resolution.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I would ask the secretary to please take the roll.
Commissioner Musich.
No.
Commissioner Cogill. Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Vita.
No.
Commissioner French.
Aye.
Commissioner Forney.
No.
Vice President Hassan.
Aye.
President Bourne.
Aye.
You have 6 ayes, 3 nays.
The resolution carries. I would entertain, I am putting the board into recess to go into the Administration and Finance Committee.
Mr. President.
Thank you. The time being 5:33, reconvening the regular meeting of the board to go into open time for the Minneapolis Park Board. Thank you, Council Rice. Every evening at 5:30, the Minneapolis Park Board takes public testimony on pretty much any topic that the community would like to bring the board's attention to. We have a couple of requests during open time. We don't hear public comment on pending litigation or personnel issues. The Minneapolis Park Board does not tolerate harassing or discriminatory comments towards anyone, so we ask for folks to keep that in mind when you're delivering your comments to the board. If you do have something around any of the conversations that we don't take during open time around pending litigation and personnel issues, we would like to hear from constituents on those, but the best and most appropriate way to do that is through reaching commissioners and our executive staff directly. All of our contact information is on minneapolisparks.org. I have three folks signed up. I have 4 folks signed up to speak this evening, and I will allocate up to 2 minutes per speaker. When I call your name, if you can come forward, state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record, and then the secretary will start the clock. So my first speaker is Valerie Solovjubs. Is Valerie here this evening? Is Eric Solovjubs here this evening? I'll check back with your names before we close open time. My next speaker is, I believe, Mary Anderson. Is there a Mary Anderson? If you could come forward to correct me on your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the record, and you have 2 minutes, and welcome.
President Bourne, Commissioner Cogill, and Commissioners. My name is Marlis Anderson. I'm a resident of the Elliott Park neighborhood. I'm here on behalf of the residents of Elliott Park in support of our request for additional funding for the Elliott Park lighting project, a critical element for our neighborhood. Thanks to the hard work of project manager Andy Schilling and the Minneapolis Park Board staff, a lighting package was put out for bid. And unfortunately, due to high construction costs, the lowest bid exceeded our original dollar amount. Additional designated funds will enable this project to go forward and be completed. Thank you for your support and encouragement with this very important project. Thank you.
Thank you, Marlis. I'm going to refer you to Assistant Superintendent Michael Schroeder. He's in charge of our planning department. He might be able to give you some more background on how to work on next steps.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Our next speaker is Tessie Bundick. Tessie, if you're here this evening, if you come forward, state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 2 minutes, and welcome.
All right. My name is Tessie Bundick, and I am a tour guide at the Theodore Wirth House. I play Mrs. Wirth, so I would like to say greetings to the commissioners, Mr. President, Mr. Superintendent. And what I'm here for today is to promote a tour we're doing on this Sunday, December 8th, from noon to 4, and we would love, love, love for all of you to come. All of you to come. And, and I have these little flyers here for you to look at. And we have such a good time doing these tours, and I think the public just loves them. At least the commentary is good after the tours. They're about an hour to 75 minutes. You learn a lot about how our park system was designed, because as you well know, the parks were designed in the basement of that house on Bryant Avenue. So we tell people that, and many, many people don't know anything about it. So it's kind of an eye-opening thing. It's historical, and people really seem to like it. And we would love to see all of you there this Sunday. I know it's a busy time of the year, so you might not be able to make it, but you're invited. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your hospitality, Mrs. Wirth. I am going to direct you to Dawn Summers. She can take the flyers and make sure that the board gets them, and she might even be able to help you with a social media invitation for the tour as well through the Minneapolis Park Board website.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Are Valerie Solovjubs or Eric Solovjubs here this evening? Are Valerie or Eric here this evening? I'm not seeing Valerie or Eric, so I am closing open time, and I am recessing the regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Board to go to the Administration and Finance Committee. Chair Vito.
The time being 5:38, I would like to call to order the Administration and Finance Committee. Will the Secretary please take the roll?
Commissioner French.
Here.
Commissioner Severson.
Present.
Vice President Hassan.
Here.
Vice Chair Cogill.
I am here.
Chair Vita.
Present.
You have a quorum.
I would ask for a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
All in favor of approval of the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The agenda passes. I would ask for a motion for approval of the minutes from Wednesday, November 20th, 2019.
I also moved.
All those in favor of approval of the minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
One abstention. Did you hear that? Okay. We have several action items.
I'll move Resolution 2019-399, a resolution accepting and approving the revised Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board financial management policies effective January the 1st, 2020.
Commissioner Forney, is your light on?
Thank you, Chair Vita. I'm not on this committee, so I appreciate being able to speak. I would not support this. Well, I should back up. First of all, has there been any, shall we say, problems or breaches in the process in the past couple of years? Can anybody answer that question for me?
President Bourne.
Chair Vita, I could address the.
Please.
I could address the comment. I'm exceedingly proud to say that last year we had one of the cleanest audits in the history of the Minneapolis Park Board because of the leadership of Superintendent Merrill and her staff. I believe Superintendent Bangora is on the same route for next year. We have had, folks will remember the last couple of years, we're currently in the middle of the Minneapolis Park Board did not follow appropriate bidding procedures with, in regards to a FEMA disaster grant a few years ago. We have had, and I'll remind the board that Commissioner Forney, you had extensive concerns last year at this time around professional service agreements. This is a resolution that I'm hoping that the committee will bring forward. I believe last week we had a speaker, Coach Tate, had also spoke in favor of the board taking a closer look at all of our professional service agreements to make sure that that the near $30 million of contracts in the $130 million Minneapolis Park Board budget get the level of scrutiny that is deserved by the taxpayers of Minneapolis. So I'm incredibly proud that Superintendent Merrill's staff ran us through an incredibly clean audit. There have been issues in the past, and nearly every commissioner on this board has brought up some concerns around professional service agreements.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have numerous. Being that if you look at other governmental agencies, this is highly unusual to lower the amount to be authorized by the superintendent. And I don't understand why we would be doing that, and particularly taking out of the process the one thing that has been, what should we say, the moderating influence, and that is going through the civil service process. So I'm having a great deal of difficulty in understanding, why we would lower the amount of what needs to be reviewed by this board. We are policymakers. We are not managers or micromanagers for that matter. And to me, this is taking the board in that direction to taking us away from governance, but instead dealing with day-to-day operations. During, I believe, the past, or maybe it was two terms ago, commissioners voted to raise the amount to the $100,000. And so to be lowering the amount, to me, puts us further into management, which that I do not see as our role, that I don't believe is what I was voted in to do. And I guess the thing that's also very disconcerting about this is that it will lengthen the time that these professional service agreements can be passed, and who will be hurt the most are the people who I believe that this board has been wanting to empower the most. It is a protracted amount of time that it will incur, and if we are sincere about our target marketing, like I say, I believe that this is going to unduly impede the process for those who need the opportunities the most. So, like I say, it's in committee, but I would encourage people to not vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 2019-399, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
I'll move Resolution 2019-400, resolution awarding a construction contract to Kilmer Electric Company Incorporated in the amount of $443,690 for Elliott Park Phase 2 Field and Pedestrian Lighting Improvements per bid event number 609, pending approval by City of Minneapolis Procurement Division and Civil Rights Department, and authorizing administrative use of a 10% construction contingency up to $44,369 for necessary construction change orders that may arise with the contract, and amending a 2019 capital improvement plan to include $144,759 from the Elliott Park neighborhood portion of the Parkland Dedication Fund.
Any discussion? Commissioner Cogill.
I'll just say that I think this is a welcome improvement. I appreciate staff working on this. I think it's a good use of parkland dedication fees in this location as more and more folks move into the Elliott Park neighborhood. It's exciting to see that we're including and expanding the improvements of this park that is used morning to night, especially that field space. And this is great to see. One thing that I did want to note is I see that there's movement of a transformer, and those big transformers are very ugly, and I have mentioned this to staff, but I just want to say it again. It would be great if we could figure out a way to make them less ugly. A lot of neighborhoods have, transformer wrapping programs where they do art or whatever. I know the city has a program, but maybe we could do our own special thing on that big metal box. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill. I would also like to say that I'm excited for the neighborhood. They have really been pushing for this. So good work to everyone involved. I'm sorry, Commissioner Musich, I didn't see your light.
Oh, that's okay. I just turned it on. Thank you for letting me speak. Commissioner Cogill, you may want to talk to Colleen Odell about the wrapping program with the city. They do wrap boxes in parks. I have a couple in my district that were put in place at the urging of the neighborhood association, so it can be done.
Great.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. Any further discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 2019-400, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
I will move Resolution 2019-401 with a small friendly amendment, if it's okay with the rest of the committee. Resolution approving change order number 1 with JPMI Construction Contract, whatever that number is. COM, I don't know if those are zeros, there's 0000909 for the Worth Chalet Water Intrusion Remediation Project at Theodore Worth Regional Park, not in a not to exceed amount of $119,629 for a new contract total of $347,626.
Any discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 2019-401, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
Continuing right along, I'll move Resolution 2019-402, a resolution approving Amendment Number 3 to Professional Services Agreement Number C41161 with Damon Farber Associates related to the Waterworks mezzanine phase in the amount of $190,415 for a new contract total of $3,648,803.02.
Any discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 2019-402, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
I will, wait, I want to amend this, so I need to not move this, so somebody else move this.
Okay, so
I'll move Resolution 2019-403, resolution approving a boat docking agreement with Paradise Charter Cruises and Minneapolis Queen for the term beginning on January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2029 for a fee beginning at $39,416.39 and increasing by 2% each year of the agreement.
Commissioner Colgill.
Thank you, Chair Vita. I'd like to make a friendly amendment that staff has said would work in the interest of breaking up this contract so we could revisit it again in 5 years. And that amendment is to change the language starting at a term beginning on January 1st, 2020 through September 31st, 2024 with one 5-year renewal clause for a fee beginning at $39,416.39 and increasing by 2% each year of the agreement.
All those in favor of the amendment
So it'll be a 4
to
year.
Resolution 2019-403, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion, the amendment passes. So I would add, the amended resolution passes. And so with the amendment, I would ask for approval of Resolution 2019-403. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? The resolution passes as amended.
Madam Chair, could I just get a clarification on that? You're proposing a 5-year contract with a board-approved 5-year extension?
It's a 4 year, not 5 year.
It's January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2024 with one 5-year renewal clause at that point.
Okay, but it would require the board's approval in 2024 to renew it for the next 5 years?
Correct.
All right.
Any further discussion, Commissioner Colgill? No?
No, sorry.
Okay.
All right, I'll move Resolution 2019-404, resolution setting the 2020 tax levy for the Park Museum Fund.
Any discussion? You sure?
I think I'm good.
Okay. All those in favor of Resolution 2019-404, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The resolution passes.
I'll move Resolution 2019-405, a resolution adopting the 2020 Park Museum budget.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 2019-405, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The resolution passes.
I'll move resolution setting resolution 2019-406, resolution setting the 2020 tax levy for Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board.
Any discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 2019-406, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
I'll move resolution 2019-407, resolution adopting the 2020 Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board budget.
I'd like to make an amendment to that motion. Motion to amend the budget reflecting President Bourne's new amendment.
Commissioner Vita.
President Bourne.
Thank you, Commissioner Vita, and thank you, Commissioner French, for introducing a set of amendments that I'm going to be passing out to the board. And to members of the public, this is let's put this up. I think that's roughly half each way. This is I'm bringing forward a slate of amendments to the budget based on conversations that this board has had in subsequent budget retreats after the superintendent's recommended budget. I believe that this reflects largely the will of this board and our work after facing a denial in our youth fund increase. This board was committed to putting more funding towards our city's youth in spite of that. There are some hard and difficult challenges in this budget and amendments in this budget. I'll walk through them at a very high level. I'm happy to take questions on either of them. I appreciate Commissioner French's help on drafting these amendments that I think will serve the youth of our city in a better way than we're currently doing today. And I just want to thank our staff and superintendent for putting an incredible amount of work into the budget this far. I think that this just brings it a little bit farther towards our current goals. You'll see in the first section there are a series of general fund revenue amendments. Largely speaking, these are denying the staff's recommended budgets for fee increases to youth services, primarily denying the semi-premier field youth increase, the non-association field rental increase, the Rec Plus fee increases, the fee increase on the Worth Pavilion. It moves on to increase adult recreation fees by 5%. It goes on to increase parkway use fees, wedding permits, and filming photo fees by 5%, construction and heavy equipment use fees by 5%, equipment construction permits by 5%, all off-leash dog park licenses by 10%, an increase in 5% to all adult winter recreation activities. It removes funding from the superintendent's recommended budget that is promised but so far not materialized from the city of Minneapolis for the forestry preservation position. There's a one-time transfer from the internal service fund to the general fund for the Walt Diesick Innovation Fund for programming focused for Somali youth in and around the Cedar Riverside area. There's a transfer of up to $75,000. There's a transfer of $75,000 ongoing from the enterprise fund to the general fund for the purposes of the board-directed youth initiatives, as well as a Main Street pedestrian parking study. That brings the general fund, this section, to a positive revenue balance of $75,228. The next section is a series of general fund expenditure amendments. The first one is denying the staff's recommended cut in lifeguards on our beaches, increasing the Walt Diesick Fund by another $49,000. A one-time transfer from the internal service fund for $49,000 to cover that for 1 year. So to be clear, there's a $100,000 increase in the Walt Diesick Innovation Fund. $50,000 of that is ongoing funding, and there's a $50,000 one-time transfer into that fund, focusing on Somali youth in the Cedar Riverside area that has the highest portion of youth poverty in the city of Minneapolis. The addition of one additional ideation space to bring the total number to 3. Our original recommendation was 4. The next two the next two lines roughly go hand in hand. The board had requested in budget retreats to have a pilot universal daycare program through Rec Plus in a near North Minneapolis site. That was not delivered in the recommended budget, but instead an alternative was presented to do after-school activities around the city. This realigns those two items to bring the Rec Plus universal daycare site to North Minneapolis. There's a line item to add an additional 60 youth to our Teen Teamworks and youth employment programs in the city. There is a denial of the Park Police Department's enhanced cadet program. There is the funding of the financial and performance analysis position and eliminating the contracted funding analysis. There's the denial of a conversion of 2 part-time park patrol agents to full-time. There's a deny an increase in part-time park patrol agents. There's the elimination of a vacant park police officer position with comparable increase in overtime. We are conditionally funding the forestry outreach coordinator from one-time funds for 2020. We are conditionally funding the tree preservation coordinator with one-time funds for 2020. There's the conversion of one seasonal gardener to one full-time gardener. There's a Main Street pedestrian only pilot study for 2020. And through the policies that we passed tonight and the revisions to our professional services agreements, I've talked to the superintendent and our finance staff. They're confident that through increased oversight on the board, there is at least $47,488 in savings from taking a closer eye to those professional service agreements. That brings our general fund balance to zero. Moving on there, I have a series of recommendations for general fund excess balances. The first one is to deny the staff recommended list in the staff recommended budget of $311,500 in one-time expenses. There is the conditional funding of the tree preservation coordinator using one-time funds in 2020. The superintendent and staff are working on a funding agreement to make sure that this position is funded and the city is paying their fair share of that. Folks know that for the last 3 years, the city has not paid their fair share of that. I think everybody thinks this position is valuable, but we all need to pay our own way. There is the conditional funding of the forestry outreach coordinator from one-time funds. There is a resolution directing staff to transfer $50,500 in unspent general fund balances from last year from failing to hire our second conservation corps and putting that in a fund for a 2021 conservation corps crew. There's a resolution directing staff to transfer another $50,500 in unspent general funds from vacancies to fund another 2021 conservation corps crew. There's a resolution directing staff to use a portion of unspent funds from not hiring the intergovernmental relations coordinator until August of 2019 and the full service community parks and schools coordinator to conduct a third-party assessment of the philanthropic and government grant landscape to determine the financial viability of including a full-time development coordinator in the 2021 budget. Moving on to the enterprise fund, a denial of the ice skate rental fee increase in the recommended budget, an increase of parking revenue across the system of 5%, an increase in permit event fees of 5%, the conversion of West River Parkway adjacent to downtown and North Loop from free to time-limited parking to pay parking, and that puts a total enterprise fund revenue at a positive $169,600. In enterprise fund amendments, there's the cost to convert West River Parkway into a paid time-limited parking. Transfer of $75,000 in ongoing revenue to the general fund, and that brings $81,900 in enterprise fund amendments. In the internal service fund, denying the purchase of the police SUV for $49,665 and making a one-time transfer from the internal service fund of $49,065 to fund the Walt Dietzig one-time programs in the Cedar Riverside area. Moving on to the capital projects and the 2020 through 2023 CIP. I'm moving to replace the superintendent's recommended 2020 through 2025 CIP with the alternate CIP that was presented to commissioners at the on November 7th, 2019. The changes to that CIP is it removes all of the undeveloped park spaces from the CIP. And then I have a series of I'm almost done. I have a series of three budget neutral, just staff directions. One is to add a department budget goal for the implementation of an ambassador program for dog parks. The next is add a 2020 department goal for the reconstruction of the Bidet-Makaska refectory as a planning department measurable goal, with planning completed and construction to begin in 2020, with the opening of the location in 2021. And adding a 2020 department goal to the planning department to outline measurable progress for the construction of Graco Park and the Shear addition, allowing for a usable space soft opening to happen in 2021 with substantial completion by June 1st of 2022. And again, I just want to thank Commissioner French for introducing those amendments on my behalf.
So any discussion on the amendments? Commissioner Musich.
Thank you very much, Chair Vita. I'm not on this committee, so I appreciate being given an opportunity to speak. Contrary to tradition, not all commissioners were appointed to this committee today and given an opportunity to voice amendments while we were here on TV under the supervision of the public. So I just would like to make clear to my constituents that I do not intend to make any amendments to the superintendent's budget at the session that will be held, not televised, at City Hall next week. I also would just like to note that I don't believe that I'll be able to support any of the amendments that are being proposed by President Bourne via Commissioner French. We had, I thought, committed to fighting climate change and trying to adapt to climate change and working to serve young people and treating people in this city with respect and compassion and finding a way to remove politics from the way money gets allocated in the city, and tried to find ways to use metrics and data to really drive where we're putting money. A lot of these amendments read like pork to me, read like political favoritism. It's not really the way that I want to see government happening. In particular, a topic that I've brought up many, many times, I'm dismayed to see that we're again talking about saying that undeveloped parks, which is kind of a made-up term, are not going to get funded. There's an ordinance in place that says that we are going to utilize data-driven metrics to allocate our capital funds. If we were to pass this budget amendment, we are in violation of that ordinance. So I'm not entirely sure how we go about doing that without breaking the law. I'm very dismayed about the forestry positions. The years I served on the Minneapolis Tree Advisory Commission, the passion that people bring through their volunteerism to trying to get the urban forest the attention it deserves, because we are not putting enough money into it, and it is what allows our children to breathe. I don't know how many of you saw the Washington Post article that compares the air pollution in Minneapolis to other cities around the world, but we have a large number of days in this city where air pollution is dangerous for people that are impaired. Many, many children have asthma. More and more children will have asthma. We can help fight those things by caring for the forest and allowing it to be successful. The fact that we're saying we don't need to do it because someone else didn't pay the bill, or, the smoke and mirrors of it's going to happen some other way, I don't believe that. We haven't found a way to do it. This was our solution for not hiring more and more forestry crews. It was to leverage the public for their labor, their free labor, to do the work that our staff doesn't have time to do because they're dealing with the crisis of losing our canopy to emerald ash borer and oak wilt and Dutch elm disease, to name a couple of things that are confronting our urban forest and its ability to succeed. So, since I didn't have a chance to really review any of these in advance, and I just got this document, I don't have any additional comments at this time. I may at our next meeting, but I'm just baffled that this is how we're choosing to do business now.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. Commissioner French.
I think Commissioner.
You can go.
I just want to say we asked staff and we asked Superintendent Bengora to make some tough decisions, and we made some tough decisions, and we prioritized what we wanted to spend resources hundreds of kids that get turned away every year for youth employment, to me, is a priority. I don't think if we take money and spend it on youth that we're somehow harming the planet. I think that's a false dichotomy a little bit. And everybody up on this board said we're going to prioritize youth, and that's what we did in these budget amendments. It's prioritizing youth. It's putting the burden not on families with kids, but more on adults. That's what we did. So I'd support other commissioners to vote yes on these amendments to make sure that we can live up to our commitments that we made to the people in Minneapolis.
Thank you, Commissioner French. Commissioner Cogill.
Thank you, Chair Vita. I'm going to say that I'm generally supportive of these amendments, and to echo Commissioner French, the refrain that I have made since I got on this board was that the proportion of dollars that are going to investment in youth needs to increase, and without cutting positions, people that are at the park board, what we're doing here is saying that that's a priority and that we're going to have to increase fees in certain places and not enhance other kinds of programs to do that. Regarding the tree investment, I too am disappointed that it's not an ongoing investment. We're going to have to look at that again next year. I think it is a shared priority between us and the city to ensure that those positions are ongoing, and I'm happy to see that they are funded this year, which gives us some time to continue to build our capacity and relationships around showing that this is a major priority. At this point, it's better than not, certainly better than not having them being funded, and it's heartening to see that there's indications that the city will pay its fair share. The question on undeveloped parks, I suppose at this point I do have a question for council. If Commissioner Musich was suggesting that by adopting this CIP we would be in violation of an ordinance, is that your analysis of the ordinance?
Council Rice?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Cogill, and this is an issue that's been discussed.
Microphone.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. This is an issue that's been discussed, and I have had a chance to look at it. What I concluded was it was appropriate for the staff and the superintendent to bring forth a recommendation that included those projects as the ordinance was drafted, so that the ordinance itself distinguishes only between golf courses, regional parks, and all other parks. The question when it arises, in looking at the ordinance in and of itself, on its face, that's the recommendation that the superintendent's obligated to bring, and it would appear that that's something that the board by ordinance has said should be funded. It gets a bit complicated when you look at the city charter, however, under Article 9, which gives this board the authority to set an actual budget. And there's some case law out there that basically says it's a major question of whether one board can bind another board when it comes to financing and spending decisions. And I'm still looking at that issue. I think at some point it's a judgment call on how you read that ordinance. It could be read the way that Commissioner Musich is suggesting. I've had some chance I was looking back in the email correspondence I had with Superintendent Miller back in 2016 when it was adopted to see how clear that was. But having said that, I still think there's a bigger question about when you come down to setting a budget, whether there's case law on that. Unfortunately, not in this state. We're still looking for it. But I wish I could be a little bit more clear, Commissioner Cogill, but that's my analysis today.
Thank you, Council Rice. I suppose that if we indeed do have the authority to set our CIP and our budget, which I believe that we should have that authority, we believe we do have that authority. If that's the case, then I'm going to be supportive of investing in and focusing our expansion of capital projects in the parks that already have assets.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill. Commissioner Forney.
Thank you again, Chair Vito, since I'm not on this committee. My understanding is that the superintendent advised his staff to look proportionally across the board at having a balanced budget with the reduced levy. They did their prioritization based upon the strategic directions, performance goals that we as commissioners set out. I'm hearing over and over again that our measurement of everything is on investing in youth. Yet we have 4 strategic directions. That is only one. By looking at these amendments, it would be proportionately offsetting the performance goals that we have put out for the superintendent. So I would not support these amendments. To cut, I mean, the forestry, position is, we need permanence in that. We voted on that last year. We need permanence in that. The fact that it wasn't filled in this past year is one issue, but the fact that forestry staff has put it as a priority, to me, I want to honor that. And because, first of all, I believe it's fundamentally the most important thing, of this park system. Second of all, to completely disregard all of the park police initiatives, to me, after we had, 2 or 3 community groups come and plead with us to not reduce our park police, and how important for our youth it is to have those protections, to me negates, if you feel that your number one priority is youth, why would you then provide them parks that are unsafe, not having the protections? So I'm just fundamentally distraught by this, and I think that Commissioner Musich nailed it, that, to me, whatever it is, I don't have my glasses on, anyway, putting all of this money into Somali youth in the Cedar Riverside area, where that was one of the communities that came forward to say, please, keep our kids safe, it's totally a political favoritism. I think she nailed it, perfectly. And the Innovation Fund, those are one-shot things, and they don't. The amount of time that it takes for our staff to supervise these innovation programs is huge. So, you're cutting off one end, and then increasing another, and I just feel like we're setting everybody up for failure by this imbalance. This is a huge system that is multifaceted, and it is not purely and absolutely about youth. That doesn't mean that youth is not important. It needs to be balanced. We up here, we need to be collaborative. We need to figure out how can we fulfill all of the needs in the system. I cannot vote on this, I'm not in the committee, but we're going to have an extra long meeting apparently at City Hall next year, 2 weeks from now, and a week from now, whatever, thank you. And as Commissioner Musich said, and it will not be televised, so I hope that the public will come and hold us accountable to this.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. I'm generally supportive of the amendments presented. Did have a couple questions just about the Innovation Fund. I'm generally supportive of increasing that, but I'm concerned about doing it with one-time payments, and I just want to make sure that like the people presenting the amendment for that, like, are we prepared to close those programs once they started? Like, I feel like one of the issues that we're going to have with the Innovation Fund, like at a previous meeting, you know, one of the recipients of the Innovation Fund, you know, asked for a significant increase in those funds, and I feel like that's something that we're going to see a lot of as we try these different things, and I just wonder if we're going to be able to follow through and, like, you know, do this for just 1 year and then cancel it after that. So I don't know if anyone wants to speak to that, but if Commissioner French is gone, or no, sorry.
President Bourne, you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Chair Vita and Commissioner Meyer. I can speak to that. I believe in general, we are presented with a scenario of false scarcity this year, and the Minneapolis Park Board has had to make some very difficult decisions. The kids of Minneapolis deserve this $50,000. The kids of Minneapolis deserve this to be an ongoing $50,000. Next year, I will be fighting for funding for that $50,000 to stay ongoing. In the same way, I'll be fighting for the tree coordinators to stay going. But we are in an environment of false scarcity, where we are in an economic boom. The city of Minneapolis is enjoying the second largest general fund increase, I believe, in 2 decades, with significant one-time funds. At the start of this term, about 8 cents of every dollar was spent on Minneapolis parks. Today, that number is closer to 7 cents out of every property tax dollar is spent on Minneapolis parks. The Minneapolis parks are being slowly strangled. And all the while, we have increasing needs. So it's my intent to fight like hell to keep that $50,000 in next year. This, in my series of amendments this year, this is as close as I could get and keep a financially responsible and balanced budget. So I wish that all of us would support the resources that this organization needs to provide for all of the city of Minneapolis, but we're not all there yet. So this is my best approach to meet the needs of the people of the city of Minneapolis.
Okay, that's helpful. So our hope is that year following, we will find additional funds to make that increase in the Innovation Fund permanent. I hope we can. I think it's going to be hard to start programs and then cut them after just 1 year, unless they're not successful, for whatever reason. So that one-time transfer, though, that one's targeted toward specific location. So I just want to also ask, like, and if we don't, like, so those specific programs, that, like, when they apply, they're going to know that this is just, it's likely that if we don't get funding for that these programs will be canceled in the following year, and so that the applicants will understand that. Is that correct?
Chair Vita.
President Bourne.
Chair Vita, Commissioner Meyer, I think we have an obligation to be upfront and transparent with everybody that we engage with. There are oftentimes, I work in nonprofit fundraising, there are oftentimes one-time pools of money for organizations to apply for. Most of these folks that apply through these funds and organizations are in that nonprofit sphere, and I think they all live on year-to-year budgets, just like we are forced to do here. Just one point of clarification. I think, Commissioner Meyer, you're aware that of the approximately $100,000 increase to the DSIC Innovation Fund, $50,000 of that is ongoing.
Yes.
$50,000 is one time. So I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And can you clarify why that is? Just what was available?
We're in a situation of false scarcity, and it was a hard budget to put together.
Okay, and I agree with the statement about false scarcity. And I'm disappointed with some of the emails I've gotten kind of pitting trees against youth. I believe we need to be funding both of them. I fought for the sustainability position for the forestry department last year. Was surprised to see that wasn't filled after we funded it last year, or even put out there yet. It is really important to me to adequately fund our forestry department, but I agree with President Bourne that we need to ask the city to pay their fair share for that. So to me, it's not a matter of choosing one over the other. It's just a matter of getting the city to help us out. I'm excited about the increases in youth programming and about the ideation centers in particular. I would really like to see one of those be at Luxton Park. I think that is a particularly good location, especially for all the youth who live there, who don't have anything like this nearby. Some people have said that that we would be duplicating efforts elsewhere. That certainly wouldn't be true for Luxton. People have been saying that libraries provide some of these facilities, other places do, but the Prospect Park neighborhood doesn't have a library. People would have to go pretty far to get these services, so I'm really excited to see that and hope that we pass that. That's all for me for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, Chair Vita. I appreciate being given a second opportunity to speak. I'd have a couple follow-up questions for Council Rice. To clarify, you had said as part of your response to Commissioner Cogill that no other board can determine how the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board spends its capital funds, but the ordinance in question is our own. So how is that another board dictating how we spend our funds?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Musich, perhaps I wasn't clear. It's that no prior board can bind a future board. Like that the theory in law is that no prior body of the legislature could obligate a future legislature to make a decision, nor a city council, nor a park board. That's the principle.
So essentially none of our ordinances are valid because they were passed by previous boards?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Musich, no, when it comes to spending decisions. That's why we have a separate provision in the charter on finances that gives this board the authority to set a tax levy and then at the same time set a budget.
Would we not have to first amend the ordinance that's in place to be able to do so?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Musich, that's the question, and as I said, it's one that I have not faced before. I've talked to the city attorney's office. It's a very interesting question where you have the ordinance on its face that appears to say, and that says you'll use a metric to determine spending allocations. Now, there's even some argument about how to read that ordinance, and reasonable people could differ on that. But assuming that the ordinance says that, you have that ordinance then that runs up against the charter provision that says the board is the one that sets its budget and sets its levy. And at that point, there's a potential conflict between the two, and that's where you have to look at principles of interpretation to try to resolve that. And one very strong theme that you find is that having a prior board make a spending decision for a future board is one that the courts and just public policy doesn't look kindly on. I mean, otherwise you could have a decision that was made 100 years ago that you're otherwise...
I'm following the argument. Thank you. So without that ordinance being changed, can members of the public that are paying property taxes and living adjacent to these properties that now no longer will be developed in accordance with the master plans that have been adopted for them sue us? Because they're paying taxes for park improvements and we are no longer providing those.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Musich, you ask another good question. It's possible. I would say it's not likely, but again, it would be, it's a matter that I intend to continue to look into, and perhaps in a week I'll have more clarity on answers.
Okay. Well, based on the volume of emails I'm getting about Solomon Park in particular, I have a feeling that this will continue to rear its ugly head should we go down this path. I had one more question. The Innovation Fund, Assistant Superintendent Cox. When this was implemented, my understanding was it was not meant to be an ongoing source of funding for any program in particular, but instead was meant to be a catalyst for exploring programming that is not currently provided within the system. Thus, it's a way for us to try out things that are new, and if they work, they can be continued by that rec center or by different rec centers throughout the city, and if it doesn't work, then it is not continued. Programs would not typically ever receive funding beyond that initial funding allocation, and if you could just please explain to me if I've misunderstood that.
Chair Vital, Commissioner Musich, that is correct. The innovation dollars were intended just for that, to encourage rec centers to try things without concern for programmatic risk. This really wasn't to encourage them to say, let's just kind of roll the dice on some things that sound cool that we haven't done before. I don't know that the practice has said that you can't be funded for a second time if you do some slight modifications, perhaps if you change the demographics or change the scope of... Okay, jumping in.
Chair Vital and Commissioner Musich, the Grant and Donation Committee actually administers the program around the Walt Dietzig Innovation Funds, and how we have designed it is exactly a way the Assistant Superintendent Cox has talked about. However, we are allowing parks to apply for and receive this funding for up to 3 years. Understanding that it usually takes a couple of years to get a program going and see if it can be grown and become into fruition. But yes, the intent would be if a program is something that the park wants to keep permanently, that it would become part of their programming options when they are looking at which programs they might be phasing out and new programs they want to be phasing in, or could it potentially become a budget request in a future year to continue that program going forward.
Okay, so if the rec centers said, hey, a lot of these Innovation Fund programs are really working well, they could come to the board, apparently isn't listening, could come to the board and they could say, we would like you to increase the budgets for rec centers by X number of dollars because we really see a value in increasing the amount of programming we offer, but the public is unable to pay the fees that are required to sustain that or whatever.
Chair Vital, Commissioner Musich, yes, that is an approach that they can take.
Wonderful. Thank you for the clarification and the information, ladies. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Cox and Commissioner Musich. President Bourne.
Thank you, Chair Vita. Council, I have some questions about my amendment to the CIP and my interpretation of PB 17-4 in particular. I think there's a paragraph that all of us have different interpretations of. And I think reasonable people can interpret language differently. And I think most people would look at this reasonable interpretation that I put forward, and coupled with the fact that I agree with your argument that previous policy boards cannot spend the dollars of current policy boards. So I'm looking at PB 17-4, the last paragraph. Says the superintendent shall direct staff to produce an ordered ranking of neighborhood parks by combining each park's characteristic annually. Such ordered ranking shall be included in the superintendent's recommended budget to the Board of Commissioners, and the final budget recommendations shall be included in an annual report. Did the superintendent My first question is to Superintendent Bangor. Superintendent Bangor, did you direct your staff to comply with this ordinance and bring forward a set of recommendations that had undeveloped parks in them?
President Bourne, Commissioners, can you repeat the question again, President Bourne?
So the ordinance that I believe we're following, saying that the superintendent shall direct staff to include an ordered ranking of all parks. Did you do that?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
President Bourne, yes.
And my question is, I think the first year, Council Rice, when did this ordinance pass? 2016?
It was passed in 2016.
So the first year we had undeveloped parks in a recommendation in the CIP was 2018? I just need a head nod from Assistant
I
Superintendent.
believe there was a recommendation list in 2017.
Okay. But not adopted. Assistant Superintendent Schroeder, when was the first year that undeveloped parks were put into the CIP?
President Bourne, in the superintendent's recommended budget, I believe it was 2019, but we're checking on that.
Okay. I guess my concern would be is if that's the case, it sounds like with Commissioner Musich's interpretation, we were breaking the law in 2017 and 2018. And we weren't sued. My reasonable interpretation of this is moving on is the superintendent did comply and our staff did comply and they brought forward recommendations. It's their requirement to recommend. The next part of the ordinance, Council Rice, do you have the paragraph that I'm referencing?
I believe so.
So the last part of the paragraph says this ordered ranking will be used to determine equitable distribution of capital rehab funding on a rolling basis for the 20-year plan. I'm not seeing the language, and I helped draft this language and I voted on this language. I'm not seeing the language, this ordered ranking will be exclusively used.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Bourne, that's correct.
So thank you, Council Rice, and thank you, Superintendent, for complying with the ordinance, and thank you, staff, for complying with the ordinance. This is a tool that we have used. We are also using our judgment that the people of Minneapolis voted us into office to use when we pass our annual budget. Council Rice, on its face, is that a reasonable interpretation of that ordinance?
Yeah, Madam Chair, President Bourne, it's not an unreasonable interpretation.
Could you defend us in court to the best of your ability if somebody chose to sue us?
Yes.
Thank you, Council Rice.
Thank you, President Bourne. Vice President Hassan.
Thank you, Commissioner Vita. Well, I think this is a clear resolution, and some of my colleagues can argue that, investing in youth and discriminating based on their race, it's okay, but it's not okay. And obviously, as a commissioner, you can say, this group or this youth, but for you to pick Somali youth, and for the first time that they're getting their fair share as taxpayers, it's a racist thing to do. And as a commissioner, that's why I was elected, to speak the voiceless. And I'm not afraid. I'm not. The Minneapolis Park Board has a history of discriminating black people. It's not something new. And that's why some of you colleagues are not here anymore. Because the people of Minneapolis choose the right people to serve them. And I'm proud to be one of those people. You can choose the wrong direction. And some of my colleagues also decided to go with the mayor of Minneapolis instead of standing with the colleagues who were planning to increase the tax levy for our youth. And now we came up with a tough decision. This is what's happening. I just landed from Amsterdam right now, just 3 p.m. today. The whole reason why I came, because I knew this is going to come. I just came back from Africa. Just how much I knew that a privileged person will sit in this mic and say Somali youth is getting $49,000 from fair share, paying their tax. And more than if they said, in closed sessions, I cannot accept. And I'll speak. They've asked a parking lot and a mosque. They've been denied. Why? Because they're Somali, because they don't deserve. But everyone else gets what they ask for. I mean, we know the history of Minneapolis Parkport. But I will strongly support this resolution, and I hope that you continue to represent the best interest of Minneapolis Parkport, not the mayor of Minneapolis, or the interest of someone that you need a favoritism to. Because you want him to support you again. I mean, I'm young, I have a long way to live. I'm not worried about the next election. I'm here to leave a legacy. I mean, if you think the park was only for retired people, no. This park board is for everyone that lives in the city of Minneapolis. If you can't make a hard decision or a tough decision, you might just resign then, so we can have a better person to serve this board. For those people for some of my colleagues to go around and delay our work that we've been elected to, or discriminate people based on their race, it's a disgusting thing to do. I support this resolution. I yield my time.
Thank you, Vice President Hassan, sorry. Any other discussion? Okay, so I'll have the last word on this right now. So thank you, President Bourne, for bringing these amendments forward. There are some things here that I think I could support, but there are some things here that I just cannot support. I think that having adequate park police staff is very important. I'm not sure who other commissioners are being reached out to by, but me personally, I have people in neighborhoods that have higher crime rates, I have lots of parents reaching out to me asking for more policing in the parks that their children are playing sports in. I have not had a approach me and say, this park is over-policed. What I have had parents say is the park police shouldn't drive on the grass. It could be intimidating. There are things like that. But I have never had anyone north, Cedar Riverside, any of the areas where we're struggling with crime in parks, come to me and say, I want to see less police in the park. It's quite the opposite. They want to see more park police in the parks. And so therefore, I couldn't support us not having adequate staffing for park police. I also can't support cutting the forestry position. During our previous session, I talked about starting an ambassador program with youth for the dog parks. I would like to see that happen before we increase the fees for the dog parks. A part of the reason why I suggested we start a youth ambassador dog park program is because I think the people of Minneapolis need to understand how to use the dog parks better before we ensue fees on them, without giving them the opportunity to even understand how to utilize the dog park. And I said, in that previous meeting that our dog park fees are attached to a city dog park fee. That is a lot of money. I also think increasing these fees are going to isolate some of our low-income communities from safely using the dog park. So I think we need to give people time. We need to provide some type of education campaign to the people of Minneapolis before we talk about increasing fees. And again, I would like to see the ambassador program I suggested implemented before we change those things. And I think Commissioner Meyer said it, you know, we keep having this back and forth. You like trees, you like kids. Guess what? I like them both. I like kids, I like trees. The problem I'm having is that if you don't support youth in the way that is suggested, then it means you're anti-kid. I love young people. I've worked, my entire adult career has been based around young people, teaching them policy systems and environmental change. But the difference in the work that I do and what I'm seeing here at this board is I've never heard anyone talk about actually talking to a young person. We keep making decisions for young people without talking to them. I have not heard a young person say they want an ideation lab. I keep suggesting we do a recreation survey. I have not had young people say, I want more money in the innovation fund. What I have heard young people say is, I want to be working on climate change in our parks. I've heard young people say, we need more girl and black kids programming in North Minneapolis. And that's not reflected in the suggested amendment of our budget. We have people who come here constantly telling us, more girls programming, more programming for kids in North Minneapolis, yet if you say you want something additional, you're a racist because it's suggested that Somali kids get dollars. I did not sign up to support some kids. I signed up to support all kids. Every single young person who wants to be served in our parks. Do I believe the Somali community is underserved? Absolutely. But so is the African American community, descendant of slaves, I should say. Also, I believe that girls are underserved in our parks, all girls. And I shouldn't say I believe it, I know it because they tell me. I see it with my own two eyes. So I can't support us just giving money to one group of young people. We need to give money to all of our young people. I get it, we didn't get what we wanted from the mayor. You know, I supported the mayor, but it's still no reason for us to not be able to compromise and make things work for this board and work for the people of Minneapolis. That's what they voted for us for. It has nothing to do with who supported the mayor or who didn't. It's about us coming together as 9 adults and figuring it out and making decisions based on that. Again, I'd rather see some climate initiatives around the, before I see ideation labs. I'd rather see us, I looked through this, I still haven't seen my suggested survey for recreation. You know, we can include some young people in that and talk to them about their needs and wants in our parks, and that would make me feel a lot better when it comes to making decisions on how we're gonna use innovation funds. And then the last thing, the innovation fund, a couple meetings ago, we had a man come in and talk to us about, I think he even asked for $100,000 to fund his program around journalism, a youth program. He showed us a video. I'm pretty sure we listened to him for about 45 minutes. He talked about how great his work was in a particular community. He didn't call out one specific group of kids. He showed us images of all kids using his program, benefiting from it. So that's what I think innovation is about. Innovation is not about just calling out a specific group of people. It's about trying to focus our efforts, our innovative efforts, on our kids in Minneapolis. That's all for me. I think now we're going to vote on Commissioner French's amendment, and I would ask the secretary to take a roll call vote on this.
Commissioner French.
Aye.
Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Vice President Hassan.
Aye.
Vice Chair Cogill.
Aye.
Chair Vita.
No.
You have 4 ayes, 1 nay.
The amendment passes, and now we're back to the, Julie, I'm sorry. Julie has some staff amendments.
Chair Vita and Commissioners, you have in front of you the Commissioner questions and attachments document. I want to point out that there is, on question number 6, there is a staff request to amend the 2020 to 2025 capital improvement program to add 2 projects to the 2020 CIP. So staff is respectfully requesting that the commissioners would forward an amendment for these 2 projects. The first one is to add a project at Above the Falls Regional Park for the Graco Park Plan implementation and Lot 2 Share Addition implementation, funded with $4,850,000 in outside funds and $150,000 in park dedication funds for a total of $5 million. The second project would be to add a project at Hiawatha School Park for amphitheater and outdoor classrooms, funded with $25,000 in park dedication funds. This is a community-led project and is in line with that park's master plan. The $25,000 park dedication allotment is just a portion of the approximately $300,000 that is available in that neighborhood. Thank you.
Any questions? Oh, President Bourne?
Thank you, Chair Vita. I'm not on this committee. I'm certainly supportive of the Graco amendment when it comes forward. It dovetailed with the language that I put into my set of amendments. I do have some questions about the Hiawatha School Park. This is the first time, or the Hiawatha School project. This is the first time I've heard of this. Staff had told me that there's some interest in bringing that forward, but can I just get a little bit of background on that and why that's before us tonight without any previous conversation that I recall?
Chair Vita, President Bourne, invariably there are projects that we are in conversation with community about pretty regularly. Neighborhoods, and in this case, PTA are aware of the park dedication funds. They're aware of the master plans. So they start conversations with us, and sometimes there's the timing is such that things happen in the middle of our processes. Had these conversations that I've recently had with the PTA at the school come forward in July, I think this is something that would have been in the CIP that we presented as the draft. It's just something that came up in the middle of the process. Amending the CIP now is the easiest way to move this project forward next year. There is a community desire for this, and they actually just today submitted some of their own designs to me that we'll be reviewing. So it really is a community-driven project. I had a conversation about this project with the district commissioner prior to bringing this amendment forward, and it just is something that feels reasonable that we can begin some implementation of this master plan and also utilize some of the park dedication money that is accruing in that neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think you have a motion on the floor yet.
I'd like to make a motion.
Commissioner Musich?
Thank you, Chair Vita. I'd just like to provide my colleagues a little bit more color on the Hiawatha School request. The school is looking to have an outdoor teaching space that is in the master plan, that they would like to get the kids out of the building and into the outdoors as part of their curriculum. There's also a desire to see the community gardens component of the master plan implemented, which would help us in achieving our goal as a board to implement the community gardens policy and plan. So really this is a pretty simple way for us to dovetail into achieving quite a few goals that also benefit young people and connecting them to both nature and plants and the outdoors. So I would be hopeful that you would support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. I think Commissioner French moved the staff amendments.
No, I wanted to, I want to move a motion to divide the question.
There's no question.
I want to divide the question between Graco and the Upper Harbor Falls tournament. I want to divide that. so we can vote on each issue separately.
Okay.
Just make
So
a motion.
you have to make a,
I did. I said I would like to make a motion to divide the questions.
But there's no question.
It's amendments that staff are requesting.
You could just move,
I mean,
Individually.
you could just move Greg.
yeah.
But on an issue that involves two issues, a request for division is ordinarily just accepted as a matter of course.
Thank you.
But there's not a motion on the floor yet.
Right.
Right.
Right. So I'm asking for a motion to move staff amendments.
Just move Grego.
I would like to move an amendment to, just for Graco.
So all those in favor of Commissioner French's amendment to just move Graco, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Any abstentions? The motion passes. Okay.
I'll move the addition of the Hiawatha School Park, Theater and Outdoor Classroom. Wait, no, is that what it is? Hiawatha School allocation, is that 25,000 or is it the 300,000?
The 25.
25,000, okay, that is what I will move.
All those in favor of Commissioner Cogill's amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any
No.
Will the secretary please take the roll?
Commissioner,
It's already been asked for.
Commissioner French,
Aye.
Commissioner Severson,
No.
Commissioner Hassan,
No.
Vice Chair Cogill,
Aye.
Chair Vita.
Aye.
You have 3 ayes, 2 nays.
The motion passes. The amendment passes. Okay. Now what else do we have here? I'm all confused. Where are we now? Are we at the full resolution now? Okay. Jono, you ready? So I'd ask for, all those in favor of Resolution 2019-407 as amended, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
I'll move Resolution 2019-408, a resolution requesting the Board of Estimate and Taxation to incur indebtedness and issue and sell City of Minneapolis bonds in the amount of $300,000, the proceeds of which are to be used for the disease tree removal program.
Any discussion? Commissioner French? Sorry. All those in favor of Resolution 2019-408, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
I'll move Resolution 2019-409, a resolution requesting the Board of Estimate and Taxation to incur indebtedness and issue and sell City of Minneapolis bonds in the amount of $10,500,000 for certain purposes other than the purchase of public utilities.
Any discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 2019-409, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. We have a study report item, a presentation on the 2019 third quarter financial status report. Director Wiseman, thank you.
There we go. All right. Chair Vito and Commissioners, good evening. I'm here to present the third quarter financial status report. This board actually approved the receiving and filing of this report at the last regular board meeting. The Finance Department prepares financial status reports for the second, third, and fourth quarters of each year. This is the first time that I'm formally reporting this report out to the Administration and Finance Committee. The Quarterly financial status report reports the operations of the general fund, enterprise fund, tree preservation, forestation fund, and the internal service funds. It is a preliminary budgetary basis report, a cash basis. It is unaudited. The report contains estimates. We have actuals through September 30th, and we use those actuals and then historical trends to project out how we feel we will end at the end of the year. So, of course, the report contains estimates and things like blizzards and other unforeseen circumstances can impact those final results when we do get to the end of the year. In our general fund, our major categories of revenues, you will note that, so 75% of the year has elapsed. You'll note that both property taxes and local government aid, our actuals are at around 50%. That is because for both property taxes and local government aid, we receive those payments in 2 installments, and the second of those installments is received in the 4th quarter. Fees, fines, and other revenue, we are experiencing an increase in our actual revenue compared to 2018, and that is largely due to the Commons Park and the transfer of $375,000 of city funds to fund the contract with Green Minneapolis. On the expenditures side, our percentage is down so for salaries and fringe, we're very close to our 75%. In other revenues, our percentage is down from last year, and that is actually due to some timing of capital, the pay-as-you-go capital transfers into the capital project funds, which will be reflected on the next slide. You will see that 69% of our expenses are related to personnel costs, 31% are other operating expenditures. This is a chart that reflects our operations by division. Division and department. You will notice fluctuations within the divisions and departments that is dependent on seasonal cycles and then timings of fees and charges. In the superintendent's office, it is slightly above the 75%. That is due to superintendent search costs. You'll see that the board is projecting to be overspent in 2019, and that is largely due to legal fees associated with Greco and then some conference attendance. And then in human resources, costs are associated with trainings and implementing the wage theft law requirements. Asset management, we are seeing that expenditures are actually percentage-wise are lower than last year. That is a good sign for us that there is stronger oversight of the spending in the asset management area. Environmental management and then the planning division are below, and those are due to vacancy savings. In strategic planning, you will see a larger cost, and that's due to the Parks for All community engagement that's going on. And then here on this side, you will see that again, you'll see the actuals for the pay-as-you-go rehabilitation is at 3% this year, where it was 81% last year. And again, that's just the timing of the transfers into the capital project funds. And so that, again, will catch up in the 4th quarter. The appropriation adjustments are made when authorized and needed. So in 2019, we authorized the use of general fund balance, just as you are considering that same situation for the 2020 budget. So a couple of those items, again, we had to increase our appropriation based both on the revenue side and the expense side due to the legal ruling, and then the employee survey and the youth program evaluation. Those were both authorized by board adoption in 2019. On the general fund balance side, we are projecting that by the end of the year, we will add to our fund balance by $219,000. We have our 5% requirement. That would leave a fund balance in excess of the requirement of approximately $367,000. And to tie that again to the 2020 budget process, that's the number that we were looking at when the superintendent recommended the use of $311,000 in one-time expenses. Moving into the enterprise operations, you'll see that that golf revenues are down from what we had projected in our budget, and they're down from this time last year. Again, we were impacted by a rainy year, which caused temporary course closures due to flooding. And then expenditures are estimated to be about at the same level as they were for 2018, and our loss is expected to be slightly greater than what we anticipated. Use and event permitting and parking are estimated to have a higher net income than anticipated. Ice arenas and the sculpture garden are both estimated to finish the year with a small loss. And then in the Capitol area, we are completing the parade parking lot, the new parking lot at Minnehaha Park, and improvements at Worth and Gross golf courses, and flooring at Parade and Northeast Ice. Recommended fund reserves is approximately $2 million. And so there are excess fund reserves estimating to be available in the enterprise fund. When we look at the internal service funds, our equipment purchases being made this year, that this board approved the allocation and the use of up to $1,250,000 in reserves. So you'll see that we are expecting to utilize those reserves. In information technology services, hardware purchases, our expenses are low right now because we haven't made our hardware purchases, and we are expecting that those will be made in the fourth quarter. And then our self-insurance fund is expected, expenditures are expected to be lower than revenue, and we're expecting to increase fund reserves again this year. And this slide shows the working capital for these three areas. So again, the equipment fund reserve balances have been building year by year, and in 2019, we expect to use about $1 million of those reserves. So I will open it up to questions.
Commissioner Meyer.
You mentioned that conference expenses were higher than expected. I didn't see that on the list, so I was just going to request a breakdown of that. If you don't have it tonight, you can send it to me. And I know that that was something that Commissioner Forney and I had both previously expressed interest in taking a closer look at. I don't think we'll have the time to do it before the budget passes on December 11th, but next year I would like to review our conference expenses and consider possible changes to those policies.
Any further discussion? Thank you. Ms. Wiseman, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.
I'd like to call the Planning Committee to order. Will the secretary please roll it? 7:08, I think it is.
Oh, no, they both say that.
Commissioner Severson.
Present.
Commissioner Meyer.
Present.
Commissioner Vita.
Present.
Vice Chair Cogill.
Present.
Chair Forney.
Here.
You have a quorum.
I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
I would like to move a new resolution requesting staff to prepare and submit to the Planning Committee by its first regular meeting in 2020 a process of further engagement aimed at quantifying and discerning support for the water play feature to be included at Victory Park.
All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Is the amendment to the agenda, right? Yes, aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Then all of those in favor of the approval of the amended agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstentions? So moved. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes, the two.
So moved.
Okay, for Wednesday, November the 6th, and for Wednesday, November 20th. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstentions? Okay, we have a couple of now resolutions and everything, so if somebody would read the first one, I'd appreciate it.
I'll move Resolution 2019-410, a resolution approving an updated easement agreement with the City of Minneapolis that realigns and reduces the area of a water main easement within Curry Park.
Okay, any discussion or you'd like a presentation on this? Anybody? No. Pretty straightforward? Well, okay, then Dan, you're off the hook, and Christine. Anyway, all those in favor of the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstentions? So moved. Okay, we have another resolution. If we would like to have that read, please.
I move a resolution requesting staff to prepare and submit to the Planning Committee by its first regular meeting in 2020 a process of further engagement aimed at quantifying and discerning support for the water play feature to be included at Victory Park.
Any discussion on this? No discussion? Oh, yes, Commissioner Severson.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Chair Forney. I was wondering if, Mr. Schroeder could come up, Assistant Superintendent Schroeder could come up and help my colleagues understand his thinking behind this.
Of course, Chair Forney, Commissioner Severson. At the last Planning Commission meeting, the 20th of November, the committee considered a resolution to approve a concept plan at Victory Park. And staff had proceeded through that process, recognizing the master plan had included a splash pad, and that no commissioner at that time was able to get support for Amendment 28B, which would have substituted a wading pool for the splash pad. Going through that process then and recognizing where we are at today, we are stalled in a project at a place where a wading pool was removed from a park at a school, and we don't have any quick way of replacing that. So if we were to go through the process of trying to amend the master plan and restarting this, we may not have a project to place on that park until probably 2022. If we go through this process and simply, as the resolution states, bring back to you a process of more engagement, basically, with the community, so we can better understand some of the nuances of what people are saying between a splash pad and a wading pool at that site, we might still be able to move through a process quickly enough where we get some work started on this in 2020. We had originally intended to deliver the improvement by August of 2020. I think if we can move through this quickly enough, we'd still be in a position where we may be able to deliver something by late summer of 2020. And to be fair, we recognize that there are some disparate opinions about the water play feature here, but what we really want to do is make certain that we do not leave the park and the community without an asset here until such time as we could bring this back into the CIP. So this is really about trying to advance this in the interests of serving the community in the Victory Park neighborhood.
Questions?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for helping us find a solution to get this solved.
Thank you, and sorry, Michael, just a couple of questions. So if I understand correctly, that if through this community, your proposal of maybe more community engagement, if it would need to be changed up to a waiting pool, what is the process that would need to be done would we have to amend the service area master plan?
Chair Forney, we would, and it's an interesting, when you look at the water play features and how we have looked across the service areas at their kind of a proper distribution, that's the piece that we want to look at. And I've mentioned to several commissioners, if this was a question of enlarging a basketball court from a half court to a full court, that would not require such an extensive process. But because we have distributed in the North Service area water play facilities according to a certain pattern, we'd want to make certain that we re-examine that pattern and make certain that people who have been expecting that pattern to be implemented can be reconsulted in this process. What we may be trying to do is, if as we move through this process of re-engaging the community, is try to overlay those two processes more directly so that we can get something started at the Victory Park site sooner.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions about it? Okay. I just want to add that I appreciate you, finding a potential solution for this, and I would highly encourage that those who voted against this project 2 weeks ago and everything, if you still have continuing concerns, please go to one of the CAC meetings, go to, what is going to be proposed, because that is the best place to intervene on this instead of coming to our committee meeting and stalling it. So I appreciate that. So all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? So moved. And then we have a presentation, I understand, by Adam Ardenson, update on the implementation efforts under the Park Dedication Ordinance.
Good evening, Chair Forney, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight about parkland dedication. It was requested that I come before you and talk a little bit about where we are with parkland dedication as we begin to kind of close out another year. It's probably a good opportunity to do that. So tonight I'm going to really cover 4 things and then obviously have time for questions if you have them. I'm going to talk about the parkland dedication basics. I know it's a bit of a 101, so I'll go through it quickly, but we do still get a lot of questions. It's a complicated ordinance, so I want to just recover some of that. I do want to talk about current funding levels in the park dedication, parkland dedication ordinance, and then talk primarily about how we select projects that go into the CIP, and then also talk about some considerations for the future. I want to put a couple things on the table to kind of have you hold in mind or to ask some questions about or have some discussion about. So parkland dedication basics, the parkland dedication ordinance took effect in 2014, and beginning at that time, all developments within the city, residential, industrial, commercial, they have to provide park dedication in some form. Affordable housing units and government entities are exempt. Affordable housing units were originally exempt, and government entities were made exempt by the to-date only ordinance to the parkland dedication ordinance. It is a concurrent ordinance between the Park Board and the city, and so modifications to the ordinance need to be done by both parties concurrently. The ordinance can be satisfied in 3 ways, and I think this is one piece of the ordinance that I find myself reminding folks about the most. The way that the ordinance lays out is that in order, the ordinance can be satisfied by a dedication of land or payment of a fee, or provision of private land for public use. And the land comes first. And what that essentially means is that if we have planning that says that we want to put new parks in an area, such as the North Loop, where we've done a lot of this work, then we as the park board essentially have the right in consultation with the city to demand land from developers up to about 10% of the total development land area. Sometimes developers say, oh, we'll just pay the fee, and actually that's really only permitted if the park board says, okay, we don't want land. 99% of the projects in the city, we don't want land. We would end up with a lot of tiny little parcels, so most of the time we take a fee. We have developed a very strong relationship with the city of Minneapolis in order to ensure that these sort of 3 step downs are followed. So the CPED staff, in particular Brad Carter, they're very familiar with our planning. They know the areas we are searching for new parks, and they tend to flag those developments and make people notice that they should consult with us about whether we're interested in the land option. To date, the park board has approved 4 non-fee park dedications, and in addition there is one that is in negotiation and we expect it will come before the board soon. I just want to map these for you really quickly. One of those is the Hiawatha Trail Link. This is a small piece of trail that connects a neighborhood to a major trail facility. It's in association with a development at Bessemer at Seward. This project went dormant, went quiet for about 2.5 years, but it looks like it now will be built. We have the 2nd Street to River connection, which is also known as the Vonnerf. This was the first one, and it is constructed. That is a fully public space that will connect the downtown neighborhoods to waterworks once it's completed. And then we have 3 projects that are associated with the 8th Avenue streamscape that was envisioned in the downtown service area master plan. The 8th Avenue streamscape has actually come to fruition, or is coming to fruition faster than we ever thought it would, in consultation with developers. And those 3 are one right here on James I. Rice Parkway with the development that's happening at Plymouth. They will provide a trailway from the river into the North Loop, so that's a key connection. And then the Nordic site right next to the Free House is providing a connection across that superblock. And then the Tractor Works site, which bridges another superblock, and that's the one that's pending that I expect that you will see shortly, possibly even in a couple of weeks. We have a public-facing map that is a great resource on a park dedication page of our website that shows every park dedication dot that has been a fee paid or a project done. And you can also click on a neighborhood area to see how much funding is available in that particular neighborhood area. So it's a really good interactive map. But with all good information, I get a lot of community calls asking me, well, why isn't this particular dot on the map? I see a big hole in the ground in my neighborhood. Surely they've paid a fee. So I do want to say that the fees do accrue when a developer pulls a building permit, when they pull a building permit. And the city transfers those funds monthly. So sometimes, though we update that map every month, sometimes there's a little bit of a lag. And it's actually possible for a developer to pull an excavation permit and make a big hole in the ground, and not pull a building permit for some months after that. So it may look like there's something going on, but if that developer has not pulled a building permit, they have not paid a park dedication fee just yet. So just know that if you hear from constituents about that big hole in the ground and why haven't they paid a fee, they may soon. Key to the park dedication ordinance is that fees must be spent in the neighborhood in which they were paid. This is called the geographic nexus. It is critical to all park dedication ordinances and kind of all developer user fees for real. You have to benefit the people that are very nearby the development. And so our ordinance uses the 86 neighborhood boundaries in the city of Minneapolis as that nexus. Fees also have to be spent on new park elements or service expansion of some kind. The way I explain it to community groups is that new people have moved into a neighborhood and they need new park elements or expanded capacity in order to serve them. We cannot use this money for rehabilitation. So repaving a basketball court would not be permitted, but building a larger playground would. And also fees can be spent on any type of parkland, regional or neighborhood, or even connections to parks. Current funding levels. This is kind of the money piece, and this is up to date as of just the beginning of last month. Right now, developers are paying just a little over $1,600 per residential unit, obviously not affordable units, but per residential unit, and about $215 per employee when they are doing commercial and industrial projects. Those fees are adjusted annually, and it is possible for a development to include both kinds of fees. So if you have retail or office on a ground floor, say, and then you've got residential above, there will be a couple of different kinds of fees. The City of Minneapolis calculates all these fees. We have no hand in the calculations whatsoever. That is done as part of, again, the building permit process. There's a whole list of fees that developers have to pay. Park dedication is one of those, and the city staff calculates everything. We just get a check every month. The total amount collected since 2014 is $19,460,000. So that's significant. And the total amount that has been allocated to projects in the CIPs, including the CIP that is technically still draft, that passed out of committee but has not gone to the full board yet, so I've included that in these numbers. We have allocated almost $9 million of park dedication fees to projects. So that's about 46% of that funding has been allocated. And some of that money has actually gone in the ground, like it is built. The Bethune Playground, Matthews Playground, those projects are built. This is just the allocated number for now. That $19 million number looks really great, but what I want to remind you is that it's actually divided up into 86 separate pots of money, which very strictly cannot be mingled under the ordinance. It's delineated by neighborhood boundaries, as I mentioned. The amounts available in those neighborhood areas range from about $2 million to $0. And 54 of those areas, 63% of them, have less than $50,000 available. And that $50,000, I use that as a threshold because it's hard for us to actually get a project going for much less than that. So you'll notice that there's a lot of neighborhood areas that do not have what we would consider significant money for park dedication expenditures. Currently, in the CIP, since we started doing this, there's funding allocated to 41 different projects in 36 neighborhood areas. So we've been able so far to touch in the CIP 42% of the neighborhoods in the city. So, I mean, there's a bunch of neighborhoods that don't have any money available, and we've still been able to touch 42% of all of the neighborhoods in the city. So we're doing okay. We're trying to get as many projects in the CIP as we can bear. And a couple of examples that I just want to mention, and they happen at a variety of different scales. At Bethune Park, after consultation with NERC, we added additional play equipment there because playground was looking a little sparse, so we brought in some more playground equipment. At Curry Park, there was a major contribution toward the Phase 1 improvements that are taking place there. There's a lot of new amenities that are planned, and so we're using park dedication for some of that new restroom building, which will also be a portal to the sports dome later. Longfellow Park recently had a playground improved. There was only about $10,000 of park dedication, but we were able to put in more elements into that playground than we would have and that were there before. So we enhanced that playground with a relatively small influx of money, but of course it matters to Longfellow Park users. South Cedar Beach was park dedication funds matched with neighborhood dollars to reconstruct that entire beach. And it was an interesting project, and it needed that match because, as I said, park dedication can only do new stuff. There was already a beach there, so we had to use the park dedication for the new things, like the restroom enclosure, the plazas, and the neighborhood money went to the rehabilitation stuff of the beach. The North Loop parks, the CIP has a couple of allocations for actual acquisition of parks in the North Loop. Central Gym athletic field expansion, the Elliott Park field lighting, which you passed again tonight and added some additional money to. That was a neighborhood priority in the previous year. A significant amount of dollars went to Sheridan Park across the river to match our federal money there in order to do that playground. And then in central Mississippi, we're looking at, we partnered with the Friends of Mississippi River to do some trail work on Nicollet Island while they were doing restoration work. And we're also looking at finally closing the trail seam between First and Hennepin near Main Street with some park dedication money, and that was a neighborhood priority as well. So that comes to a thing I want to just sort of make sure that it's clear about selecting projects, how we select projects. You see a draft CIP that me and my staff prepare each year, and it has CIP projects, or it has parkland dedication funded projects in it. And I want to give a little overview of how we put those in there. First of all, I do want to stress, that though the city calculates the fee, as I mentioned, they pass a check to the park board every month, and all parkland dedication expenditure decisions are made by you, the Board of Commissioners. That is true of when we accept land in lieu of a fee, or when we get land as a first tier option. It also is true of all the allocations in the CIP. It is in the ordinance that fee expenditures have to be authorized through the CIP, so we try to get as many of those in as we can during the CIP process. Sometimes, as you did see tonight, there will be in-year amendments to the CIP if we have a timing issue or if something comes up in the middle of the year. So the Elliott lighting tonight included an in-year CIP that adjusted the 2019, but we try to do more of the bringing it right into the CIP. Unlike the NRP funding that everyone's familiar with, and this is a conversation I have a lot with neighborhood organizations, unlike the NRP funding, neighborhood organizations do not decide how fees are spent. Even though the neighborhood boundary is the nexus, it is the park board, it is you that decides how the fees are spent. But we frequently and regularly are in consultation with neighborhood organizations and other community groups to provide recommendations to us that we can then bring to you in the CIP. All lands that we acquire and all fees spent should be in line with the master plans that we do. So we encourage neighborhoods when we consult with them to really look at the master plan and think about what out of that are their priorities. Because there's a very wide range of fee amounts throughout the neighborhood areas, I've developed a little process, a little system for how we spend that money and how we bring it into the CIP. And it's really based on asking three basic questions. The first question is how much money is available in that neighborhood area? And again, that $50,000 breakdown kind of says to me, are we talking about significant money where we could initiate a brand new project? Or is it really not a lot of money? So how much money is available? How many parks are in the neighborhood? Are there more than one park? If there's only one park in the neighborhood, we have limited choices where we're going to spend that money. But if there's more than one, then we need to balance that. And then the last question is there a capital project soon? So I ask those three questions, and based on their answers, I sort of classify each neighborhood area, and then that's what helps me decide what to do when proposing projects to you. So for instance, if we have one scenario where there is not more than $50,000. So these are all the small numbers, the less than $50,000, the $1,500, the $10,000. And also if we don't have a capital project very soon, it actually kind of doesn't matter how many parks are in the neighborhood. That's what I call a type 0. And I'll get to what I do with that in a minute. But if we do have a capital project soon, and if there is only one park in the neighborhood, it really makes sense to leverage that capital project and spend some of the park dedication money. And it doesn't even really matter how much there is. And then I call that a type 1. And then lastly, if we have a lot of money in a neighborhood area, and if we have more than one park in that neighborhood, it also then really doesn't matter if we have a capital project or not. Those are big, complicated potential expenditures, and I call that a type 2. So there's three basic types of neighborhood areas as they're getting classified. These are not types of parks, these are types of neighborhood areas based on those three questions. The type 0 ones, unfortunately, we have to wait. It's really hard for us to start a $10,000 project somewhere. So for the most part, we kind of have to wait, other than some rare circumstances, but that's typically what happens. A type 1, we typically add this to a capital project. So this is what has happened in a couple of parks where, like Longfellow, as I mentioned recently, we had a playground project. We were revamping that playground. Longfellow, that neighborhood, actually the Howe neighborhood, had about $12,000 in it. So if we don't add it to that capital project, we're going to have a really hard time spending that money. So we went ahead and did that. It makes the project much more efficient. And those number 2, those type 2 projects, that's when we consult with the community. So I do go around to neighborhood organizations. I meet with them. I talk to them about what their priorities might be. I help them understand what's allowed, what's not allowed under the ordinance. And sometimes they report back with very detailed lists of what the itemization might be for those things. So for instance, the project, the trail projects that Nicollet Island East Bank has proposed that is in the CIP before you, that was their #1 priority after consultation with the community. There's a project in the draft CIP right now at Dickman Park to do pickleball courts and enhanced picnicking areas. The Stano neighborhood did significant community engagement on their own, and those were the priorities that came to the top, and they presented those to me, and so then that goes into the CIP. Again, those are type 2 projects where there are larger and there may be multiple parks. Stano has both the waterfront and Dickman Park and a couple of triangles, so we wanted to consult with them on that. So just for reference, and this continues to change as the numbers change, but right now at the moment there are 39 neighborhood areas that would be considered that type 0, and that includes the more than a dozen neighborhood areas that have $0. There are 21 type 1 projects and 27 projects that need larger consultation. So a couple of considerations for the future as we go through all this, and then this is the second to last slide, and then I'll open for discussion and questions. And these again are just sort of thoughts as I operate the program, that if you have ideas now, great. If it's something to mull over, we can continue the conversation about it. Park dedication ordinance isn't going anywhere, so we have some time to continue to talk about this. Currently, more funds do come in annually than are allocated to projects currently. The economy is booming, and there are lots of construction cranes, and that means that a lot of money is coming in. And we are not spending it at the same rate, or we're not allocating it at the same rate as it's coming in. And part of the reason is that areas with the largest fund availability are areas without capital projects. So that means that spending funds would require the startup of new projects, in most cases, in addition to our CIP commitments. So we would have to add brand new projects to the CIP, and we do. You see new projects come into the CIP each year. Dickman Park is an example this year, but we have to be judicious about that. Some community members have begun expressing concern to me as I go around and meet with neighborhood groups about the inequitable distribution of funds across the city, potentially. So though it's not universal right now, it is true that areas with large fund availability are not those where the park equity metrics are the highest. There are some exceptions to that, but in most cases, if you have a high equity ranking in those parks, you probably have low availability of park dedication funds. That provides a potential balance in our CIP now, but it could result later in a doubling down in certain areas that are already seeing a lot of benefit. However, as I mentioned, the geographic nexus is pretty critical. So I don't know how we get around this, but it's something that people are starting to notice, including. I'm just noting this as a consideration that I'm hearing from the community. Some affordable housing rule changes might necessitate also some ordinance changes. So there's a couple of things that are coming forward. Most notably, there are some new federal calculations around affordable housing. And then the city's inclusionary zoning initiatives, which are coming forward, could change how the ordinance reads around affordable housing. And then the last thing that I want to just note and throw out there is that parkland dedication funds don't expire. But we do have to consider what is the expectation of the community and also what is the expectation of developers that the funds that they have paid are going to benefit the residents and users that are coming into their areas. And for the record, I'm not suggesting that we need to change the nexus in some way. I'm just noting that these are conversations that I'm hearing as I talk to people about the ordinance around the city. And with that, I would love to open it up, Chair Forney, for any questions or discussion you'd like to have.
Thank you, Adam. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. I have 3. So was there a change with regard to governments being exempted? Because I recall that this was a controversy with Hennepin County in particular, and I feel it was pretty recent. Like, we just had to approve the arrangement for their facility at Lake and Hiawatha, right? So I didn't know that there was a change. Can you expound on that?
Chair Forney, Commissioner Meyer, yes, the ordinance has been amended one time to date, and it was amended to exempt government entities from paying the park dedication fee That was not originally included in the ordinance, but the ordinance has been amended to exempt government agencies.
And when was that amended?
I'm going to call a lifeline to Council Rice on that.
27.
You can tell me later.
Superintendent Miller was here when that happened.
Okay. And then you just mentioned in passing that the inclusionary zoning ordinance might change something. I didn't catch all of what you said, but I want to make sure that I'm paying attention to what they propose. So what are the potential changes that might happen there?
Chair Forney, Commissioner Meyer, as I understand it, the way that affordable housing is described in the ordinance currently may not exactly describe what will be required in the future in terms of affordable housing under both new federal rules and the inclusionary zoning potential. So there may be some housekeeping that has to take place in order to continue to exempt affordable housing.
Okay.
And there are some better experts than me at the city around this who are beginning to have conversations about what the effect on the ordinance might be. And I think you can expect that there may be some dialogue coming forward to you about exactly this with a lot more detail than I'm able to provide right now.
Okay, I'll follow up with you. I just want to be checking to see if this is something that IGR needs to be looking into. Lastly, so who maintains the park dedication map? Is that planning staff? Is that communications?
Commissioner Forney, Chair Forney, Commissioner Meyer, it's planning staff that keeps that map up to date.
Okay. So, it says on the map that it was last updated November 4th, but it still is lacking lots of changes that we've made. For example, in my district, we've allocated a lot of funds in the Prospect Park neighborhood for the park that is temporarily being called Towerside, but that's not reflected on there. You and I spoke about this, months ago when I had to ask clarification because I was giving the wrong numbers to neighborhoods based on what I saw here, and seeing the last updated dates on there. So I guess I'm just asking your staff to update that more frequently so that and make sure everything's in there so that we're getting the right numbers out to people, because I was telling people that there was a lot more money available, not realizing that much of it had already been allocated.
Commissioner Colville.
Thank you, Chair Forney. Thank you for this overview. It's really helpful and exciting to see that half of the dollars have been allocated to date. I have a few questions and thoughts. The point that you were making about the potential of double dipping, kind of because we're investing more capital dollars in certain areas, are you suggesting that in the future there might be some sort of reconsideration of our equity matrix based upon some of those allocated dollars? Like, so for example, if there are dollars that are additionally spent in my East Isles neighborhood or Lowry Hill, that would impact other kinds of allocations. Is that kind of where you're going with that?
Chair Forney, Commissioner Cogill, I think it's a question that I don't know exactly how to answer or solve. I think it's something that that could become conspicuous, and I think what may happen is that we may be continuing to invest park dedication funds in neighborhoods that we've even already invested in because they continue to be redevelopment drivers, even as we get to them, those parks, in the equity metric. And so you'll have parks in areas that see less development only getting CIP money, and then other parks may get lots of both. And so the one thing that will happen in terms of the interplay between park dedication and our own equity metrics is that when we spend park dedication funds in a particular park, that does count against the historic investment metric. And if it does improve facilities, then it will count in the overall longevity and facility quality metric. So that park score may drop because of that park dedication investment, which means that it will come later in our CIP. So there's a little bit of an offsetting piece in that the investment of park dedication does ultimately result in other parks being prioritized above it that did not get that investment, but it still is something that that community members have started to ask about and wonder about.
Okay, that's helpful. It's also kind of gets to my next kind of theoretical thinking about, I struggle with that because it's not how community members necessarily in general think. They're not going to be thinking about, they're going to be seeing what dollars are spent or not spent, not really how it impacts the laudable but somewhat complex metric of our racial equity plan. And so I guess what I'm thinking about is when this, if you could maybe take me back at all to when this started, what was the thinking around dedication fees being used to kind of glom on to larger projects versus ensuring that dedication fees were used on specific projects without outside dollars? What was that? Was that a consideration, or what was
Sure. Commissioner Forney, Chair Forney, Commissioner Cogill, I think it really is a question of practicality. So if we have smallish amounts in neighborhoods, things less than $50,000, it's really often very hard for us to initiate a project on its own. And if we had many of those across the city, it would be extremely staff time inefficient and construction cost inefficient to do them that way. And so if we have the opportunity where we have a big construction project happening already, and we can add money to that, that's where we get the most bang for our buck in terms of the construction cost efficiency and also staff time to deliver those projects. So, and in some cases when there's very low amounts in neighborhood areas, if we don't add them to a construction project, we're not sure how we would spend $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 by itself in a park. We kind of have to add that to something else. Otherwise, it will barely even buy a bench.
Okay. Do we have to manage the projects? Could we mete out these dollars in grants to other organizations to manage the projects?
Chair Forney, Commissioner Cogill, I think under certain conditions that might be possible. It would have to still fulfill the requirements of the ordinance. And we do have one example on Nicollet Island. The Friends of Mississippi River were doing some restoration work, and our master plan called for a gravel surface trail through that restoration area. And they actually brought that to our attention and said, hey, we should probably build this at the same time so we're not wrecking the prairie later. Do you have any money that might go toward that? Being that that's a new facility, a new trail, we consulted with the neighborhood organization to see if we should spend that park dedication money. It was put into the CIP that was brought before you to do that. And then FMR built that trail and then invoiced us for the work, and then they were paid out of the park dedication fund. Right. So I think that there are situations where that would be possible, but it's probably really a case-by-case basis.
Okay, so that's possible. I guess all those questions are to get to the point that I feel as though there is an opportunity with both the fact that the funds need to be spent in the neighborhoods themselves and that we already have this practice of connecting with neighborhood organizations, that we could potentially provide a more community-driven, participatory process and experience for communities to think about how they spend those dollars. And the reason I'm asking about whether or not grants could be put together would mean that perhaps there wouldn't be as much extensive staff time devoted to allocating the dollars. It would require staff to give up some of the control over those dollars. But I think that it would be something to consider, especially for smaller projects. I have asked on a couple of occasions here and just to staff generally if art projects or something that could be spent, CIP, or not CIP, but that these dollars could be spent on. And those can often be very small amounts of money, and certainly could be something that neighborhoods could make those could discuss. So anyway, I would encourage that thinking to happen, partly because I think one of the benefits of having this program first is to see the dollars spent and to be able to point to something and say that, you know, this is the asset that the development got. And when we're often putting the dollars into larger projects, it's harder to necessarily point to those things. It's also an opportunity to develop neighborhood participation and sense of ownership over projects in a way that's larger than consultation. Now, certainly I believe that it's very important that the board approves these projects and that we have a role in this and that certainly staff has a role in it. But it seems to me that we have this great opportunity with this particular program to really get community ownership over new assets. Just some thoughts.
Chair Forney, may I?
Yes.
Chair Forney, Commissioner Cogill. I think these are all great ideas, and I definitely agree that I think there's different ways of delivery of this. I will say for the record, I think the art is still an open question for me, whether that really is an increase in park capacity and therefore eligible. I'm willing to continue to have the conversation about that. But the Hiawatha School project that was mentioned earlier tonight, the community's doing the design work on that, and I was just delivered some sketches today. So that's a project that it is a relatively low-cost project, and we expect that they're going to do most of the design work. It may be even something that gets laid out in the field. We're not sure how it gets constructed. We may use internal forces to construct it. We're just beginning to have those conversations. But I think it's something that there's a clear opportunity for ownership there through both the design and possibly implementation. So I like that way of thinking, and if you hear ideas from the community about that, any of you do, I'd love you to bring them forward to me, because I think we do want to begin to spend this fund down more aggressively, and the more efficiently we can do that in terms of staff time would be great.
Commissioner Bourne?
Thank you, Chair Forney. Yeah, I agree with quite a bit of what Commissioner Cogill's feedback, and I appreciate the economy of scale of plugging some things into bigger projects. But I have some of the exact same problems. If I go to the Kingfield neighborhood right now, where MLK Park isn't slated for repair until I don't know when, because their last major project was done before the ordinance was created. They have enough money to they have enough money to add a second drinking fountain or maybe do a modest shade structure. And it's really hard to go tell some of these neighborhoods, like, no, because you didn't, so I think in particular with some of these smaller projects, that I would like us to think creatively about how, very similar to what we've done with the Lopit in the past, or with some of our tennis court rehabs. Here is a grant with some grant conditions. You return us an amenity in completed form, and we'll either reimburse you for that or have some sort of mechanism for that to just receive the completed amenity. Like if I look at the Wyndham neighborhood that has like $20,000, I'm going to be telling them to wait for maybe a generation. And those folks that have those developments are usually kind of frustrated by the neighbors are usually kind of frustrated by what's going in. The new neighbors that are moving in are adding additional pressure to a park system. So I'm pretty supportive of when there's opportunity to tie projects together, but we do need to find a creative solution for these neighborhoods that will likely be sitting on dollars for a long time, that can really have a lot of good community will towards the park board, and make a lot of very needed amenities. So what John said, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam, for this presentation. The parkland dedication fee has been something that's been very exciting for me, knowing that so many communities adjacent to us have had it for years, and took us something like 12 years to get the city to allow us to have it here. To see it, actually being implemented is very exciting, and I appreciate your presentation about it. The things that have been always, though, a little bit quirky to me about it is actually hearing the way that you're presenting it, is that we're looking at this as kind of just that little extra boost to finish off maybe a project or round it out, or however you want to say it. And in a lot of ways, I've looked at it a little bit differently, and it might be because of the communities that I'm thinking of. The one that always comes to mind, of course, is my backyard, and that is, what was it called? The land bridge over Lake Street. It's not really, what community is it in? And there we are straddling, and who's it benefiting, and that type of thing. And yet this is an area that has, I'm assuming, I haven't looked on the map and everything like that, but I would imagine that all of those adjacent communities have a collective amount of dedication fees that could bridge, literally, figuratively, anyway, so many needs in that area. Being West Calhoun is where I live, and I was on that board. They and Cigna talked about actually having a physical bridge going over Lake Street and Excelsior to make that into a more, a safer connection, okay? And the problem with West Calhoun, of course, is that they don't have any neighborhood parks. So, how maybe we can make those things work. It doesn't seem like the ordinance, shall I say, allows it because of this divide of the neighborhood communities. I know that we did do the one exception of around the communities around the commons to accumulate funds for that. So I guess, I was concerned a little bit about Council Rice saying, well, you can't change the ordinance, but it sounds to me like we have been tweaking it when we find out that there are, issues with things. And so I'm just trying to get a sense of how much flexibility there is and how to address. That's one of many questions I guess I have. And to me, it's more a matter of, what problems have we seen to date, and how are we maybe adjusting to those things, and whether or not it is through an actual ordinance change, if it's or amendment, or whatever we want to call it. Anyway, I get the feeling that Council Rice wants to
Thank you,
respond.
Madam Chair, and I apologize for my earlier outburst. But you did raise a good point, Chair Forney. The board first started pursuing this initiative in, I think, 2006. It took a long time because we had to go through the city council, the legislature, go through some imperfections. And I'm glad that the board's here and listening to this. The ordinance can be changed, but the money that's paid into these accounts has a legal concept that's gone all the way to the United States Supreme Court called nexus. And this is not general tax money. These are fees that property owners have paid to receive a benefit. And the benefit has to be almost tangible and that they can touch and look at. It's designed, it's not unlike the issue that we had just last meeting on the special assessment for East Bedea-McCoska Parkway. We have to show a real tangible benefit to the property owner that paid this fee. And if we don't do that, the whole ordinance could go down and poof, the money's gone. And I'm glad this has been brought up, and I apologize to Mr. Arvidsson, but if there's any citizen out there in a committee looking at this $10 million as if though it's theirs, it's not. The money was paid pursuant to the city ordinance and the park board ordinance with some extremely short and tight leashes on it. The money has to be spent in the immediate area where it was collected to benefit the property owners who paid the fee. And it has to be a certain type of investment in terms of hard capital assets, not only by the terms of the ordinance itself, but by a whole body of constitutional law that backs it up. And I think the other thing that's good about it, this money's around, but basically this board has, sounds like $10 million so far that hasn't been allocated. And everyone who paid this fee paid it with the expectation that they were getting it to the government in return for which they would get some immediate or tangible benefit to their property. And that's a lot of benefit out there that a person who paid the fee could say, I paid it, and what am I getting for it? And at this point, some people could say, nothing.
Thank you. I'm going to allow Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. I just have a clarifying question for Director Arvidsson. The people that are reaching out to you about this are not concerned about taking money from a neighborhood not their own. It's that their neighborhood has money and it's not being spent. Is that correct?
Commissioner, Chair Forney, Commissioner Musich, there's a couple of themes that have risen up, and I've actually heard, in particular, on the East Bank, there's a group of neighborhoods there that have specifically asked me about pooling their money to do certain things, and I have told them that that's not allowed under the ordinance. And so that's one thing that has been raised and discussed. The other thing that comes up is actually neighborhoods in which there is a significant amount of money have raised concerns about those neighborhoods that do not have funds, and wondering if they could move some of their funds to other neighborhoods to even out the playing field a bit. It's very well intentioned, but I've also told them that that would not be permitted under the ordinance.
Not under the ordinance, it's under the Constitution of the United States.
Thank you.
And that's what I was going to say, not permitted under the ordinance and also backed up by the Nexus case law.
And the people that are on those neighborhood association boards are not necessarily always the property owners that have paid those fees and are expecting a service in exchange for that. So, okay. There was one other thing that's coming up, or those were the examples?
Those are the main examples. I think there are also folks in the community that we work with that are our equity advocates around park access, racial equity, that have raised concerns about how park dedication is distributed across the city. And again, my answer typically is,
the Supreme Court. Thank you.
Supreme Court, and yeah.
Appreciate the clarification. Thank you. Thank you for letting me ask that, Commissioner Forney. Oh, my light was already off.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, like I said, that's my one conundrum. It happens to be, these communities that are abutting each other, and yet, there is a shared goal, and how do we deal with that? That's been one of those things. I mean, I'm thinking about like the land bridge, potentially at the Upper Harbor, or adjacent to the Upper Harbor Terminal, things like that, are literally, how do we bridge those communities and deal with, shall we say, the lines that we drew. At least my observation is that has been an issue, and how you might be addressing it.
Commissioner Forney, I think there's been some very isolated conversations about the lines, the neighborhood lines, but it doesn't come up a whole lot. I think most of the areas that we consult with to think about projects, there is a neighborhood park, most of the time solidly in the middle of a neighborhood, and that's what we make improvements to. I know there are a few rare instances where there's that, what neighborhood is this in, what neighborhood does it benefit, but those are rare, those are more rare.
Okay, but they're there at least, and how we approach that and everything. If we need adjustments here and there, I appreciate keeping us informed of what is needed there. Well, I thank you. I can't see any other lights and everything, so I will take a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We are adjourned.
Reconvening the regular meeting of the Park and Recreation Board, Chair Vita.
I'd like to move Resolution 2019-401, a resolution approving change order number 1 with JPMI Construction Contract COM 0000909 for the Worth Chalet Water Intrusion Remediation Project at Theodore Worth Regional Park in the total not to exceed the amount of $119,626 for a new contract total of $347,626.
It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on 2019-401? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries. Chair Vita.
I'd like to move Resolution 20